Hello! Are you ready to have a crisis? Because I'm here, Crisis, with a K, to talk about this past week's comics and this past week's life and whatever else you really want to talk about. So welcome to Crushing Comics Live here on Crushing Crisis. If you haven't tuned in before, welcome for the first time. And if you have tuned in before, wow, you're back. That's really kind of you. And if you haven't already, do the things, subscribe, smash the buttons that one smashes, because this is an hour earlier than last week. Now, that's not something I want to make a habit of, but in the future, if the time should have to vary a little bit, and you don't have a time variance authority to explain these things to you, if you hit the notification bell, it will notify you of such happenings. So I am here today to talk about last week's pull list. I think I pulled over 45 comics last week. Oh boy, it was a lot. So I have so many comics to talk to you about this week. And I also am going to do all the things that I usually do. Count down my top 10 comics that I've read or so far this year. Talk about an AMA of anything you want to ask me about comics or life or anything. And I have a few from last week that I need to get back to because I missed them, but then I caught them because I really do go back and read all of the comments. So I'm going to try my best to keep up with all of your comments live, but I will absolutely see them after. I'm not joking. When I go through and put all the anchor links so that you can find all the individual issues on rewatch, I also go back and read all the comments. So how are you all doing? Let's see who is here in the chat. My good friend Max Appleman. Woo! One less hour of waiting and aching. Been jonesing for a week. Well, it's here. You're having a crisis. Bunkmaster Be on Comics 1 hour earlier. That's 60 dang minutes I don't have to waste to get that weekly crisis goodness. Javier Hernandez. Hey, y'all. Martian Pilgrim, first time to catch this live. Welcome to the live, Martian Pilgrim. Glad you're back doing live shows on this channel, they say. I'm glad too. It's really fun to be communicating directly to you, unadulterated. I'm able to just say whatever comes to my mind for 2.5 hours. The world needed more of that. Clearly, James Abel with my motto of the year, resolve, repair, recover. A couple of other familiar faces here. Earth Geomancer, Cruel Angel, Crisis, Ryan Bragg. Ryan, good to see you. Rising Phoenix Railroad saying, yay, it's a crisis Sunday. Nick N, hello, everyone. Hello to you too, Nick N. PJ Lights popping in to say, go Birds. That's right. It's the only sport that I kind of, sort of still care about. We will watch later in the week. Have fun. We certainly will. Georgie Chimchinamov. The live stream is part of the sliding time scale so it can move around. This is true. I do like consistency. It kind of makes me a little crazy when we're on near mint condition and we like move things a half hour this way or that way. A lot of that time though, it's just to like get everybody's 2-hour window. I really do like consistency, but today, as it happens, is the first day. Okay, there we go. See, now I'm starting to detect these problems. I was saying it's the first day of the New Zealand school year. And so I have to go see Kid Crisis at her first day of school and like meet all the teachers and stuff. So I had to move this up a little bit. All right. Did I miss anybody else while I was having that brief technical hiccup? Oh my gosh, so many more people. All right, speed run. Madrox Multi, Pizza Hut Omni before 2030. If you don't watch all of Near Mission, you're mint condition. You're missing possibly half of the story of Crisis lore. And we talked about last week how there's these X-Men Pizza Hut comics. They were like half size and you got them at Pizza Hut, surprise. And I actually tracked them all down. There's 2 different series of them and I have them and they've never been collected. A lot of those kind of like weird, tie-in comics and like commercial comics. There's the infamous Charleston Chew comic, which I sent away for, and they never sent back to me, and I'm aggrieved to this day. Saz Murph says, hi, a crisis. Edo Lorena says, greetings from Argentina, sir. Greetings to you, Edu. You know who, my good friend Tyler. If you haven't already subscribed to UXpose, please go do so. Hey, all, 3 R's day. Tiago Pessoa saying hi, how is everybody? And Captain Underpants reporting for duty. I've got one more because I don't ever want to miss a 5th of Jack Gaming. Good afternoon here, and whatever it is to you, nothing like a midday crisis I agree. And of course, my fellow Kiwi, Samantha Jane, who I'm going to get to be on Omnidog's Vault with later this month. And maybe Samantha and I could like cook up some Kiwi special thing to just do together. Who knows? She will catch the replay later. She's about to go on a run. She's been doing some intense running lately because I saw one of the pictures of her like at the end of the run. I have not been running at all. Ever since I started doing the swimming, I'm like, running? I don't want to do that anymore. All right, so here is, if you don't recall the order of events here, I'm going to do my Moment of Krisis, which means I'm going to kind of just diatribe about something for about 5 minutes. We'll see what. I didn't even put it in the title this week. It's just going to be extemporaneous. Then we're going to do a brief look at my top 10 comics of the year so far. Then we're going to do a brief AMA if you've had burning questions. And I have a couple that I know that I missed last week, so I do want to answer a few. Then we're going to go through all the polls this week, and I have 1 minute per poll to try to explain to you why I liked or disliked or recommend them. And then we'll do a little bit more AMA at the end, maybe a song. I'm on a little bit of a timeline this week. So let me first remind you about what runs this show. Well, first, let's start at the beginning, shall we? CrushingKrisis.com. I think most of you know this by now, but I have created and cultivated and curated a website called CrushingKrisis.com since 2000. But actually, the comic started in 2010, and that's where all these comic guides are. And the reason I read all of the comics that I read is because I want to be able to keep all the guides on Crushing Krisis updated and kind of know what's going on with comics. So that's where the reading everything came from. And actually, if I can do my first screen share of the day without totally messing up, you never know with me. You just never know. Let me get to the stage. Oh, I like this one better. Last week, as promised, I put up the new guide to magic. There's Odefell doing her amazing magic cosplay. One of the reasons I actually did this guide. So every time I launch a guide, I don't know if you know this, I, on the homepage of Crushing Krisis, write an essay that even if you're not a patron, you can read, and that kind of covers the greatest hits of that character and explains their publishing history, because I don't ever want my site to just be for patrons, even though it's only $1 or $2 a month. So even if you aren't a patron, you can go and just read kind of my unfurled thoughts on Ileana as Magik here. And then also, that means there is a brand new guide to Magik. And this one took way longer than I thought it was going to. It wound up taking almost 10 hours. But that's because when I do a character that doesn't have their own solo book, I like to do their greatest hits. And if you expand this little list, it has all of the issues that you need to read. There was about 140 to get every major Magik story beat that there has ever been. And it excludes anything where she's just teleporting people, arguing with people. If you read this, you've read the core of Magik. So it takes a long time to do that because I have to reread every issue. But I actually have read every issue of Magik already, save for 5. So this went a little faster than the typical guide because I would get to an issue and be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So yeah, that is the new $1 guide for patrons as of last week. And if you want access to that, you just go to patreon.com/krisis. It's only $1 to access all X-Men guides, some other smaller Marvel and DC guides, and then $2 to access every guide. Probably by the end of this quarter, there's going to be a higher tier that's going to relate to some video stuff. But, you know, we're going to explore together what kind of video stuff we all like. You like me doing, I like doing for you. We find mutually entertaining. And then we will add something that's that, but even more intense to the video tier. And we will all get to enjoy that. Okay. So, oh, I have to stop the thing and go back to the other thing. I'm thinking, I know it's kind of charming to see me have a total train wreck as I tried to produce myself, but do I need a producer? Like, would it be fun if I just had somebody who was like putting the relevant comments up while I was racing to review an issue, or like make sure I didn't miss any of the AMAs? I've been kind of thinking about that. Like, should I, because that wouldn't just be somebody who was a YouTube moderator. They would have to probably be in StreamYard with me. So it's a lot of trust there if I did that. All right. So I guess the next thing to do is my my diatribe. Right. We have to remember the order that things go in. So this is this week's Moment of Krisis. And this week's Moment of Krisis is about everybody's favorite new publisher, Dust Larceny. No, DSTLRY. I'm talking about, of course, DSTLRY, that is spelled with no vowels, DSTLRY. And I truly, when I did the first week of this and I put one of the DSTLRY covers up, I had no idea who they were. I was like, I just keep seeing big names associated with this. I guess I've got to check it out. And then last week, I actually read a DSTLRY comics and talked to you about it, Scott Snyder's new comic. And it was really expensive to buy digitally. But I was like, well, you know, let's take a dip a toe in, see what DSTLRY is about. But here's the thing. I got to take a step back from just DSTLRY. I like comic books and I like collectibles, but I don't like making stories collectible. One of the main things that I like about all of these collected editions is that they democratize the access to the storytelling. So no longer do we have to go drop $30 or $50 or $100 to buy a certain comic just because we've never experienced the story in that. And I am from the 90s, so I remember doing that. I remember there were X-Men issues that I had to plot my budget of what the big milestones were that I wanted to read. So yeah, I dropped 20, 25 bucks on Uncanny X-Men 201. I dropped 20 bucks on Uncanny X-Men 225 because I wanted to experience those stories. But now, not only do collections make it so that they kind of are maintained at a pretty solid per issue price while collections in print, but we've got digital, not just the all-you-can-eat digital on Marvel Unlimited and on DC Universe Infinite, Comixology, Global Comics. There's so many great choices, but just the ability to go and buy a single digital issue. Now, I have no complaints about making digital issues more expensive to kind of make up for print, although the profit margin is much, much higher on digital because there's no distributor charge, right? You've only got to pay the platform that's giving you access, but there's no printing, there's no mailing, there's no comic store taking a cut. It's just you and the platform that's distributing it, right? Image used to sell their own comics on image.com and they made all the profit. I don't, but I guess they decided it's a lot to run an e-commerce store and do all that payment processing. So they put that aside. So I'm really into companies that democratize the access to their stories, which brings us to a few bad ideas that companies have had recently. And one of them is the company called Bad Idea, another company I fundamentally do not understand. They put out comics, sometimes only announcing them a few days ahead of time. They only go maybe to comic stores who are like savvy enough to play their weird alternate reality game of tracking all of their stuff as it gets announced and released. And then you have to physically go to the comic store to read that comic. They have no digital presence. I don't think they've done collections. I am somebody who tries to read every comic, at least every #1, unless it's something I know will not appeal to me. And I got boxed out of Bad Idea. You know what? They wanted to make physical collectibles. That's fine. I can understand that some companies just want to exist in the physical realm and they eschew digital. That's cool. But DSTLRY takes this one step farther because DSTLRY actually sells their comics on their website and they sell their own digital comics on their website. But what I think I understand about them is that their digital comics are limited. And the way I discovered this is I went back to recommend that Scott Snyder comic to a friend, and the digital is not on sale anymore. It was just on sale last week when I bought it and read it, and it's not now. Now, if you want it, you've got to go on their marketplace and buy it. So does that make it an NFT? I don't know. But there was a Chip Zdarsky comic this week, Time Waits, with art by Marcus Toe, that I really wanted to read. And I went on DSTLRY thinking, all right, I'm going to pay my $16, I guess, and like read this digital comic. And it's not there because you got to go on the marketplace to buy it. Now, I don't want to make this whole diatribe about DSTLRY's business model, but there is something fundamentally strange to me about taking this thing that could be democratizing access to your stories, spreading the love and spreading the word, which is digital access, and making that the most time-boxed, time-limited access to the stories by only selling it for what, like a week, and then making you have to buy it as resale from somebody else. There's no room to bring somebody in. Why would I talk about a DSTLRY comic on this show that you might not see until the following Wednesday, and then you can't access that comic? It makes me angry. So look, I want comics creators to thrive. I think they should all be millionaires. I have a long list of professions that I think should be millionaires that aren't in the current world. Teachers, firefighters, and comic creators, artists, certainly. But guess what? We need to be able to access the stories, hype the stories. It's just such a high wall to build. And I get it. They're trying to appeal to people who want a physical product. And they're saying, look, if you want digital, you better be keeping up with us every week because otherwise we're going to make it hard to get. And they're making their own buying platform. So they're making a cut out of every one of those digital resales. But you know what? Krisis ain't got time for that. I only got a moment, and I'm trying to read 45 books. And if you're trying to send me down a rabbit hole of an alternate reality where I've got to only go on your site and then hunt for things on the digital back market to buy them, I ain't got time for that. There are other comic companies making better comics than yours that are more accessible than yours. And that's really what it comes down to for me in this moment of crisis, is accessibility of storytelling. Everybody wants to write the best story. Not everybody writes the best story, but the more you make your story available, sometimes that can make up for it not being best. Sometimes it can be really good and really available, and those two things together make it a hit, make it beloved, make it something that we're all talking about. And it's the same thing about the streaming wars on TV, where every streamer has their own system, but at least on streamers, if you pay for the subscription, you can just watch the freaking movies. So I will never again be reviewing a DSTLRY comic. I'm so sorry that I recommended one to you last week because I want to talk about comics that you can actually get. So if I recommend an indie comic, another indie comic will remain nameless right now. I reached out to them last week to say, hey, I couldn't find any way to buy it digitally. Is there a way? And they offered to send me a review PDF, which was so kind because I'm only in the 4th week of this, 5th week, who even knows, 4th. And I said, you know what? That is so awesome, but I wouldn't want to review it on the show if people couldn't buy it. So if you're like planning to make it for sale digitally in a week or two, yes, I will review it because that'll drum up interest. But I do not want to talk about stuff that you can't get because this is about talking about comics that I want you to love. So if you can't love them physically or digitally, then I don't want to talk about them. And that is today's Moment of Krisis. Okay. Totally unprepared for that. I just said what was on my mind. So I'm going to do my top 10 comics of the year so far. Then we're going to do a brief Ask Me Anything. And I will try to get to a couple of things I remember from the last time. And then you can ask me new things too. And then we will get into this week's comics. Okay. So give me a moment. I have to bring up all my stuff that I do. All the moving pieces have to start moving. I got to hide the thumbnails because you guys don't like that, which is good. It's good feedback. I agree. Single page view, no sidebar, hide sidebar. Okay. Producer wouldn't help me with this unless they were like physically in the room with me. Sometimes I do watch channels that do that. Like, of course, I'm a huge fan of Trixie Mattel. And I watch her videos all the time. And she has her producer physically in the room with her producing while she's doing the video. And then a video editor and all that. Let's make me famous enough. And then I could do that, right? So let me hide the sidebar. No, not hide toolbar, goof, hide sidebar. There we go. Oh, and I need my timer. Whew. Today, this hour early thing, I mean, I woke up at like 5:15 to start getting ready for this. Not that, you know, it's not like it's a hardship. Like I'm doing this and it's fun. We're talking about comic books on the internet. But yeah, it threw me off. I don't have all my normal stuff ready that I normally have. But you know what I learned from rewatching last week? Because here's the thing you have to understand about me. I am such an inveterate A student that I can't let any moment that's recorded of me go by without going back to that moment and like rewatching it and giving myself incredibly critical feedback. I learned from the last week one that like I can always slow down. I have this thing, and I was like this when I was in the band too, where I constantly want to fill time. I mean, the band would pay 5-hour shows and we would take like a 15-minute break, which is crazy. No one is doing that. Nobody sane is doing that. And because I just would want to fill every second. Okay, so here are my 2025 comic series power ranking. I get 1 minute and there are only 2 new entries this week, so I think it's going to go just fine. Coming in at number 10 is Superman by Joshua Williams, and somehow Dan Mora is drawing this at the same time he's drawing Justice League. Does he have a time turner? How does he do it? It turns out that I love Superman. We'll talk about this later, but it's just so pleasing. It's just so Superman. Welcome to the Maynard. Still is a magical hotel that is totally Disney-fied in the 60s. Love it. This one's going to surprise you because we know I hate alternate reality BS, but guess what? I am addicted to this book, TVA, the Time Variance Authority, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later today. Then everything else was already in my top 10 last week. We have Batman Dark Patterns by Dan Watters and Hayden Sherman. Gorgeous, creepy, probably the best Batman book out there right now, though it has some competition. Storm, Earth's Mightiest Mutant, which is a fantastic and possibly the best ever dissection of Storm. New Gods, Evan Cagle, the artist, is having a real star-making moment, and Ram V is writing a really compelling plot with Mr. Miracle in the center. Nice House by the Sea by Tenyan Bueno and Belair, which I am happy to make my entire personality. Living Hell by Caitlin Yarsky, some of the best cartooning I've ever seen in a comic. I cannot wait for issue 3. Absolute Superman, which is Hope Core, and I love it. Who knew that Jason Aaron had that in him? And number 1 last week, if you didn't see me talk about it, go back to last week's video and check it out. It is FML by Kelly Sue DeConnick, David Lopez, and Peter N. Cowles. Big fan of FML, and it's just so my thing. I think one of my moments of crisis in the future is going to be talking about like tropes and how I identified what my tropes were. And now that I know them, like when I see a book, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my stuff. I think there's a lot of power, but I think to know what your tropes are, you've got to read widely. Some of my tropes that I have as my tropes now, I would not have if I only ever read Marvel, because Marvel just does not do them. Phonogram behind me here one of my tropes is just like comics that are about real life music, comics about actual music in the real world, as opposed to comics about made up music, which I will be talking about later today. And I wouldn't know that if I hadn't just taken a chance and bought Phonogram. If you're not a subscriber of the YouTube channel, The Comic Pals, you should go and subscribe. They are some of my favorite folks to hang out with on the Evergreen shows. And they did an absolutely amazing interview with Kieran Gillen over the weekend, which you should watch. They asked one of my questions. So I was over the moon. I'm obsessed with Kieran Gillen. He's one of the two creators of Phonogram, along with Jamie McKelvey, and his Power Fantasy guaranteed will be my #1 book as soon as the next issue comes out. It was like my #2 book of all of last year. And with that, we begin our first brief period of Ask Me Anything. So I am going to, gosh, I hope I wasn't muted that whole time. That would be horrible. Okay. Oh, you know what? We're going to talk about the few from last week that I missed while you start queuing some up. Somebody asked me about this necklace. I think it was Tyler. So here it's a really important thing if you have a piece of jade or green stone that you wear. It's something that is very, I won't say sacred, but very important in New Zealand and Maori culture. And I was gifted a really lovely piece of green stone by some colleagues at a job a few years ago. But it's got very sharp edges, and I'm a delicate, delicate flower. And it was scratching me every time it sat on my chest. And also I fidget a lot, and it was hurting me. I mean, it wasn't like sharp, but it was sharp enough that it would kind of like bruise me if I didn't have guitar calluses at that time. So I was going through a really rough period, I guess about 3 years ago, and I wanted my own kind of worry stone. I don't know if you've ever had a worry stone, but just a stone that's round and pleasing to hold. It's kind of like, you know, the Stone Age version of the fidget toy. And I thought, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if I had my own jade worry stone? And I found this kind of jade that is gold. It's a little greenish now just because it's gotten burnished over the past couple of years of worrying it. And so I got it for myself. And I feel like usually it's as a gift, but it was a gift to myself. Like I wanted to give myself something physical and stable, and I never take it off. I wear it swimming, I wear it in the shower. And if I ever am feeling like stressed or anxious, you will find that I do this, which hopefully I don't do too often on video. And actually was pretty affordable for the piece that it is. I mean, there are people here wear huge, huge pieces of jade. And those are very, very expensive. But I just wanted a little personal piece for me. So that was one of the questions that I remember from prior weeks. Gosh, I remember towards the end of last week, and I didn't mean to just cut it off. It literally was as I was turning off the comments to play music. Somebody asked me what pronouns that I'm comfortable with people using for me. You can use whatever pronoun comes to mind at that time. I personally respect other people's pronouns. I personally am not super, super fussed by them. If you haven't seen my Twitter bio or anything, I at the moment think of myself as non-binary. Who knows if that'll last forever? Gender is a construct. Tear it apart. But in that, I don't really care about if I'm they, them, or he, she, whatever. It doesn't super, super matter to me. I just don't love being grouped as one of the guys. Hey guys, all you dudes, Peter or Krisis and all the bros. That like makes me go like whoa. But that's really it. I don't really, and I think, you know, it's really important that people who get gender dysphoria from having the wrong pronouns assigned to them, that we really respect that, because it's such an easy thing to do, to just call people. I mean, if somebody's nickname is Charlie and we call them Chuck instead, you would never do that. They'd be like, that's not my name. So why would we not just use the right pronouns for them? I don't know. So I think it's really easy, but for me, I'm easy to begin with, and I really super don't care. Okay, so let's look for AMAs. Oh, I have to take away the banner if I want to highlight comments. Okay. Bunkmaster intuitively knew we would be talking about Bad Idea when we started the topic of collectability. And Martian Pilgrim says, on point as always. Rising Phoenix, subscribe for a year of Krisis on Patreon. Oh my gosh, yo. That really, really matters to me. Like, so that if you don't know, you can subscribe for a year, and it's got like a very minor discount, I think like 10% or something. But when you do that, all that money happens immediately. And when I hit the thing like I hit last week, where I had to buy a whole year of RAM and additional GPU for Crushing Krisis to run on, it's so nice to be on a month where a few people have subscribed annually, because it's not just like $1 from each of them. It's you know, $10 or $20 from each of them. And I know that won't recur the following month, but when there's those pop-up expenses, oh boy. We have the name changes passing on DSTLRY. Tyler saying, yeah, if I can't access a book easily and have it jump through hoops to secure one, I am not gonna read it. James Abel, yeah, turns out I'm into Superman. Who knew? I didn't even know I was Superman curious. I didn't even know I was open to Superman. Kevin Ork just read, Four kids walk into a bank after hearing me mention it every now and then over the past several years and loved it. It was like if Wes Anderson made The Goonies. Oh my gosh, I'm going to steal that. I will try to remember to credit you. Yeah, I think Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. I'm looking at my shelf to the side here because I usually keep it within arm's reach at all times. I think it's a perfect comic book. And it's gorgeous design. Black Mask. I wish they stuck with it. They had really cool stuff that was like a little transgressive and a little weird. They had really nice collections. I was really rooting for them, and they seemed like they had trouble scheduling problems and then money problems, and it kind of all went awry. But there's actually a TV show in production right now. Tyler's talking about TVA, fun, a strange one. It might be that it's in canon with the D+ series and the Marvel Universe. We'll get to that later. Eric Garza saying yes to Superman, yes to Dan Mora. Eric Garza used to say was not a Superman person, but really turned around the character in the last 12 months. The more I filled in some blanks. Yeah, Eric, there's really not been any bad Superman comics since the beginning of Rebirth. He had some fun stuff in New 52, and like if you like Morrison, and you know, there were some good things. But I think Superman, you could almost pick any mainline Superman title from 2016 to present. That's 9 years, and it's going to be at worst okay. And at best, one of DC's best comics, which is really, really wild. Max Appleman says, what's my favorite recording where another artist does a non-featured performance, like Bowie singing backing vocals on Satellite of Love or Jagger singing backing vocals on You're So Vain? That's a really good one. I love finding things where other artists guess, and I do this thing where I do a complete chronological listen to certain artists. I say certain, there's over 200. We'll talk about music some other time. And I will track down all of their significant like backing vocal features on things. And I love that. Now we know that I seem like a human database, but I would need to bring up my database. But you know, the one that sticks out in my mind is Juliana Hatfield sings backup vocals on 1 or 2 songs on Amy Mann's all-time classic singer-songwriter album, I'm With Stupid. And I love Juliana Hatfield. I think she's so underappreciated. She just pumps out album after album, and she has so many good thoughts. And like, to me, she's like guided by voices, like where she'll just always put out new stuff and she'll always be great. And people just ignore her because she's a chick from the rock era. But I love Juliana Hatfield, and I think Amy Mann is possibly the best songwriter alive. So to have them both in the same recording, really, really cool to me. James Abel says the Comic Pals, Kira Gillen talks power fantasy more. James, maybe I need to make you the kind of person who can, oh gosh, oh God. Oh, sorry. I started playing my own YouTube video. I was getting high on my own supply. Maybe I need to make it so that James can post links for you. Because we all know that James is the cerebro of all of the channels. Let's see if I make him a standard moderator, if that lets him put links in. All right, we'll see. And I'm gonna just, all the people whose YouTube channels that I talk about all the time, and then I'm like, I don't know the link to your channel. Maybe I should just make them standard moderators so they can actually post the link to their channels. So I don't know. This is all on the fly. We're just gonna try and see how that goes. Okay, back to the AMA. The Comic Pals interview is great. The Comic Pals are amazing. What's my favorite title currently? What's your favorite nostalgia read? Well, FML is my favorite title currently, but once Power Fantasy is back, it will be Power Fantasy. I can't wait to talk about it, but I'm here to talk about current polls. Favorite nostalgia read? I mean, clearly I love X-Men, but if we're talking about things that I like, will just go back and reread. I mean, it's not nostalgia, but I love Birthright, which is only about like 10 years old right now from Image. And sometimes you can tell when I have certain indie books that I can always reach for and get, like Four Kids Walk Into a Bank and Birthright. It's because I love them that much, and I really will just page through them all the time. I feel that way about Maestros by Steve Scroach. I've read it so many times. So I don't know, nostalgia means like 80s. Well, we'll talk about one today, actually. I have a lot of nostalgia for G.I. Joe in general. And so when G.I. Joe is done well and it's super toyetic and it references G.I. Joe stuff from the 80s, even if it's new G.I. Joe, I still will like it. And there was a G.I. Joe book this week, so we'll get to talk about that. So that's a real nostalgia button thing for me. For some people, it's Transformers. As I've mentioned, I don't really have any history with Transformers. So that. Ryan Wilson, always noticed certain tropes writers use a lot and really tend to turn me off to a lot of writers because they come so, let me try that again, at a normal human speed. I always notice certain tropes that writers use a lot, and it can really turn me off a lot of writers because they become so predictable. Well, Ryan, I've been thinking about this with Chip Zdarsky because people were so subscribed to Chip. They wanted everything from Chip. And then Chip started doing some different things, especially indie, like Domain. He did that comic that was like in this little town, and then there's creepy things happening. He's got this DSTLRY comic. He does so many different things, and people are like, well, I don't really like Zdarsky. His quality is not always consistent. Well, no, the thing you don't like is that he doesn't just have tropes that he's beating over the head constantly the same all the time, right? Certain writers have tropes, and that's good, but then if you read all of their stuff, if that trope is not like your hit right in the solar plexus personal perfect trope, then it's like not as exciting. So Daniel Warren Johnson, who I love, who everybody loves, he does have a couple of certain kinds of plots that he will always hit, and it's a little bit like they're his tropes, which is fine. Everybody's got them. But I'm getting a little tired of those storytelling beats. Whereas Zdarsky, I never really get tired because he doesn't really go back to the same things. Tiger Eyes, how much did it cost to ship my books to New Zealand? I only know what the entire shipping cost was, and this was in 2017. Shipping has gotten 3 or 4 times more expensive since then. I was actually working with an international shipping client for a while, and it's wild how different it is compared to 7 years ago. And I think all up, like supplies, getting it on the boat, getting it off the boat here. But this is not just my books. It was all of my belongings, but my books are like a sixth of my belongings, maybe, was over $20,000 US at the time. I mean, it absolutely depleted my savings completely. Like I got here, I paid for being here, bought a car, and that was it. I didn't buy a car like in cash. I just like had enough money to put down a car, and that was kind of the end. And luckily I was not buying a lot of comics at that time, so I had time to recover. And but yeah, it really, really cost a lot to put things on a ship, and that's only getting worse, especially as political entities are starting to fight more and more about control of shipping lanes. Okay, we only can do this another minute, because then we got to get started. Jean-Remy Argueta, hello. Hope you're having a great day. Currently at work, but we'll pop back in whenever he has free time. Have a nice stream. Okay, let's see. Novaargh. Greetings, Novaargh. I get so much pleasure from your name and that little profile picture. Anything Superman is always in your pull list. Having been sick this last week, I'm so sorry to hear that, Novaargh. I was able to catch up on 3 Absolute titles. Happy to hear that. Started with Absolute Superman #1 yesterday. Great stuff. I think it's perfect. I think there's a special art to writing a perfect #1 comic. I think if you want to read a truly great #1 script, Kelly Thompson's Birds of Prey #1, perfect #1. I've reread that so many times, because not just because I like the characters or the art, but because the script is so perfect. Okay. All right. I'm going to get to a couple more AMAs. I barely ate to the first AMA. Keith says, at the risk of opening a can of worms, I'm curious to know more about my Tom King version. Found you when we were reviewing Hawksbox. Gosh, that was eternity ago. And it was a ton of fun and a great appendix to the event for me. Tom King has tropes. He has tropes both in terms of his topics and in terms of his writing style. I don't always really vibe really well with people who are incredibly formulaic or prescriptive in their comic formatting style. I know some people really get off on it. Part of why I like Gillen is he'll be really formulaic and then he breaks it, and then he'll be really formulaic and he breaks it. Tom King, I feel like I already know what's going to happen on the page as before it even happens, because I know how his scripts roll out, even if it's not his normal genre. And as somebody who reads a lot of comics, it gets so annoying. And I don't think he writes women well, but he's positioning himself as this writer of women who's going to highlight all of these female characters. And then I hate everything he does with every single one of them. So for show and for fun, I will mock him, but I don't hold any ill will to him as a person except for his war crimes. And I also know that it does me no good to just keep reading his books. So Wonder Woman was a book this week. I did not pull it. I will periodically catch up on Wonder Woman on DC Infinite, but it's just going to make me angry and make me say mean things about Tom King. And we're not here for that. We can still be, can we still be part of the Tom King hater organization? You can hate whoever you want, man. Hate is universal. But you know what? Hate the art, not the artist, or hate the artist, not the art. You don't always have to hate both at the same time. All right. There's a higher tier on Patreon. Sign me up. Love your guides. Would love to support. It's coming, Mara, but I want to make sure it's worth it. I don't want to just put my hand out and ask for more money. I'm an overachiever. If I'm going to ask for higher tier, it's going to be a higher tier. That is worth it. Okay. Let's see. Not a lot of questions. Did I read One Hand and Six Fingers by Ram and Dan Waters? I didn't really like it, Eric Garza. We're going to talk about this more today. I do this thing where I read a #1 issue and I see the universe that exists in that #1 issue, and I get very enamored with the universe and the world building. And then if the story feels too small, or it gets like too stuck on the minutia, or if it gets too rubber bandy where like somebody's chasing somebody but then they chase the other one and then it reverses, I call that rubber banding. It's just my personal term. I get turned off so fast because I'm like, the universe had so much potential. I love that universe. I liked where it started. I liked a lot where it ended. Some of the middle, and I did read the books interspersed with each other, kind of just, I felt like I was reading reading the same thing over and over. And I love the first couple of issues so much. I actually do like that noir detective thing. If there's a little bit of a supernatural or sci-fi twist, I don't just like your standard noir detective stuff, but it just really wore on me over the time. And good, I did pick the right kind of moderation because James able to do that. Okay, I think I got to the end of the questions. Great, awesome. And apparently, hopefully everybody just left when I started talking about pronouns. No, I'm joking. Pronouns are just part of language, y'all. You can't be anti-pronouns. It doesn't exist. Okay, let's do the thing we came here to do. Do you think 30 minutes is too long to do all that intro stuff? Like, do you think I should break up the pull list with the intro stuff? Does that make sense? Like, should I do some of the pull list and be like, oh, hey, now we're back and we're going to do the top 10 and do some of the pull list and be like, oh, then the moment of crisis? Or do you all just like that it's kind of like a late night show that's, you know, the real content starts like 10 minutes after? Okay, tell me that. So we're going to do, to everybody who has not seen this yet, the thing that I do is I talk about every new comic that was out this week. I've read over 40 of them. So for those, I will have exactly a minute to, or more if I decide, to tell you what I think about them. So let's go stop my screen share and let's present and share the screen and sing a little song about sharing the screen. Okay. And what I learned last week, hold on, is I need to move over further because my beautiful curls kept getting cut off. So this way, no, this way. It's always dangerous when I start moving the computer because you don't know what's going to start falling apart in the room around me. Okay. But then I start looking at it and I like drift more and more this way. So, okay. People are saying breaking up the content is nice, Nick says, but also we have keep it late night, like that late night show vibe, your show, my rules, like the late night approach, and just what I do, brother. Okay, well, heard. All right, this is 2000 AD, and I got to read it because, as we all know in the Crisis lore, I'm allowed to read 20,000 AD when I've read all my other pulls. So this has all of the same comics as last week in it. They're just extensions. And what I'm discovering is 2000 AD, like every issue that you buy or like, you have no idea what the quality is going to be. Even if you liked the stories from the last issue, you just don't know. Because this issue, all the same stories of the last issue, but this one kind of sucked. And they were more middle chapters. It was like more of a middle chapter of Judge Dredd. And it didn't have as much about society, which, as we established last week, is the first time I ever read a Judge Dredd story. And I really liked how it like explained this dystopian world. But this was just about like Judge Dredd being an a-hole. And it just was not as interesting to me. Then I really like this Hawk the Slayer thing from Alec Worley, Simon Colby, Gary Caldwell, and Annie Parkhouse. I would definitely read a whole series of this fantasy thing. I love the art. I think the writing is really good. Great lettering. This Portals of Black Goo doesn't make any sense to me. I did like Fiends of the Western Port, which is Oscar Wilde in the Wild West hanging out with a vampire who like just is like coveting his blood, but also is telling him stories about vampire debauchery by Ian Edgington. I actually really did dig that. And then this last story just didn't make any sense to me. It's by Dan Abnett, who I love, but just wasn't a favorite of mine. So 2000 AD, I will continue to read it if I get through my old pull. It's like a special treat that I read. For me, this is Monday morning, not Sunday, because I'm in New Zealand. It's just a special treat that I wake up and I have my coconut water and I read 2000 AD if I got through my whole pull. Okay. Oh, you've been waiting for me to talk about this one. It is Absolute Wonder Woman by Kelly Thompson, Hayden Sherman, Jordi Belair, and Becca Carey, who might be my favorite letterer at this point, because every time she letters a book, I'm like, damn, I love these letters. And then it's Becca Carey. Here's the thing. I am really enjoying Ultimate Universe because it's getting in and out quick hits, right? Absolute Universe, they pretty much all decided that they were going to go in with a really long first arc and it was going to be broken up with some origin stuff. And it's gorgeous. The writing is great. Kelly Thompson should be writing Wonder Woman for as long as she pleases. This arc is too long. We're still fighting this giant monster. Still, after 3, like, let's go somewhere. I think what I like about Absolute Superman is kind of one big conflict that he's been having with these troops on the ground in where he went, but it's like not like one conflict split. Like it was the conflict in the first issue and the conflict in the second issue. This Wonder Woman book, it's gorgeous. I love it. I love the whole trope with her disability and the way that she compensates for that and makes herself able. But I can't. The arc is too long. I'm already bored. Which is not to say I don't like long arcs, but if you have this whole new universe, it's absolute, like, start with something that's going to grab me. Don't just do like your standard 6-issue writing for trade arc. So it's good, but that's why it's not in my top 10. I'm just bored. Alligator Loki. So Marvel has these joke comics on Marvel Unlimited. This Alligator Loki issue 45, where like the whole thing is it's just like 10 pages worth of comic pages, and it's like funny and it's pretty and it's just like a little bit of a gag. Except for this one by Alyssa Wong, it's never funny, which is so weird because Alligator Loki, very inherently amusing, cute, just like Jeff the Land Shark. There's never a joke. Like there's no punchlines. It's like all joke setups and no punchlines. And Bob Quinn, whose art I really, really like, Bob Quinn doesn't really deliver any punchlines in the art. Like in art, when you got these single panel scrolling series, you got to do like set up punchline, set up punchline. That's how you got to do it. And it just doesn't work, which I hate to like bag on a free comic about how bad it is, but it just makes me angry. Oh, there's a trash truck outside. Sorry if it gets loud. But I mean, like this is cute. And it's like Wolverine fighting ice sentinels, but it's not the joke. It doesn't pay off anything. Okay. Amazing Spider-Man, the many deaths, the 8 deaths of Spider-Man. I saw a lot of Spider fans angry about this on the internet, and I'm so sorry if you're a Spider-Man fan on the internet, because it seems like there must be no joy in your life. This one is written by Justina Ireland, who's alternating issues with Joe Kelly with art by Andrea Broccardio. I kind of actually really, really did like this, though. I know people get really hung up on who Spider-Man's kissing. I don't care. He could kiss Johnny Storm. Actually, I'd like that better. But he can kiss whoever he wants. I like him with MJ, but I know he just had a girlfriend. I know that he's like kissing Black Cat. What is he doing? I don't really care. I like this because he was so depressed after fighting this particular child of Citrak. I think her name was Calix. And in the last issue, it was just about how he was like moping and sad. But in this issue, he's actually like moving around and interacting with other characters and talking about like, what does it matter being a hero if so many people are going to die anyway? Like if I save 10 people in New York this week, what does that matter if I can't stop a famine, right? And it's sort of like a form of whataboutism, where like, is the good that I'm doing personally good? What about all this bad that I can't fix? And I think it's very relatable, because I think in the world as it stands today, especially this week, that's something that a lot of us are experiencing, right? This idea of like, oh, like, well, if I can't fix everything in America, should I even try to fix something locally? And I think it's really compelling to see Spider-Man go through that. And I think the art's really good. So I actually really kind of dug this issue. Arcbound, I haven't read this. It's Tom Hardy, like movie star Tom Hardy. So I was like, oh, cool. And then I was like, Scott Snyder, who I don't always love his scripts or his tropes, right? I don't think he's a bad person. I just don't like his scripts. Frank Thierry, whose ideas I vehemently dislike, usually. And then I was like, that's not going to bring me joy. Let's Mary Kondo it out of here. Archie is Mr. Justice. I didn't read. I do read Archie comics sometimes when they have like an ongoing Archie series. I like ongoing. I like shared universe. These, even when they were doing Archie horror, but they all kind of connected, I like snorted that right up my nose. I loved it. I don't like, maybe they're doing a whole Archie Superverse and I just haven't looked into it right now, but I just don't need to see the Archie characters as heroes. I'm not saying it's bad. You might really enjoy it. And I also have really been liking the writing by this writer, Divert. I think her first name is Amanda. She's actually been clicking for me. Okay, now we come to Astonishing Avengers, which is another one of these Marvel Unlimited books. This one is by Steve Orlando, and it's actually an extension of his Avengers Assemble. So if you still want to see that team happening, this is like the intro arc, and they still got the main Avengers in it, which is why Storm is on this. But it's mostly got his like jacket Avengers. So it's written by Steve Orlando with art by Francesco Archidiacono and colors by Carlos Lopez, letters by Travis Lamb. I actually kind of like this. I like that Steve Orlando, and this is something he is actually good at. First of all, he's good at writing for Vertical Scroll. And I think Francesco Archidiacono is drawing well for Vertical Scroll. If I'm on one of these endless Vertical Scroll comics, I want to see you play with perspective and height and motion, right? And I think there were tons of pages in this that did that. And am I pointing the wrong way again this week? No, I am. You solved that for me last week. And the other thing I like is he kind of took like an old Avengers villain and made them briefly scary, but also made them like a little bit of a patsy or a fool who like fell for something. I kind of like when people do that. I don't like them making fools of old villains that were scary. That bothers me. But I like the old villain being useful and having a moment and being brought back and then being a part of something larger. That's just something I enjoy. So I think if you got Marvel Unlimited, you should read it. Then we have another Marvel Unlimited book. All of these books that come out every week are all astonishing something, and they're the ones that are in continuity. So this is Astonishing Spider-Man by Scott Aukerman, art by Julian Shaw, colors by Cecilia De La Cruz, and letters by Joseph Bino. I was really hard on this last week, but you know what? I'm here to revise my opinion. We can all grow and change. And the revised opinion I'm going to give is, I think actually Scott Aukerman is really good at the Spider-Man part. his Spider-Man, he was just in a fight with a villain here. It was charming. I liked it. It was funny. The action was good. He quipped and thwipped, which was, we know, is my bar for a good Spider-Man. But when he was trying to do all the Spider-Man relationship stuff in an Infinite comic last week, it first didn't feel like it had enough panel time. It didn't feel like there was a good enough way to use the Infinite Scroll for that. And it didn't feel like it was, time well spent. Like, you're never going to move the needle on Spider-Man's love life in one of these Infinite comics. That's the Spider Office is going to always mainline that. So why are you trying? Like, give us this. Give us a fun fight. If we're just going to go online and read a free Spider-Man comic, let's see him hopping around and whipping and doing funny things. So I really enjoyed it. I liked it. And finally, oh no, I didn't put the cover first. Okay, sometimes we make mistakes. So this is Astonishing X-Men. It's going into its second arc. It is written by Tim Seeley, who, again, I love. Can we please get Tim Seeley on a real X-Men book? How many times a week do I have to like reread and re-scroll through this to get Marvel to put Tim Seeley on a main X-Men book? So this was Tim Seeley, art by, oh gosh, this is small. Somebody, I don't know, I can't read it. But this is Black Tom, and he's in New York, and he's like trying to just have a beer, but everybody's ragging on him for like, oh, you didn't care about all of us like little criminals while you were on Krakoa. And then Cap has to get involved, and it's a really well-drawn Cap, even though it's a really brief fight. And then he calls Juggernaut to like be like, break me out. And somebody's like, oh, you're talking to your boyfriend on the phone. And I'm like, yes, they're boyfriends. I love Black Tom. I love Tim Seeley's scripting. I love this artist, Eduardo Arduino. I like the colors from KJ Diaz. Clayton Cowell's always a solid letterer. This is good. Like, give me more of this. This is X-Men's the perfect line to have one of these unlimited comics that just goes on and on and on, because there's so many characters. There's so many things to look into. Black Tom's not going to hold his own X-Men comic. Like, but could we do 3 issues of this, which are the equivalent of like 1 proper issue just of 1 Black Tom story? Yes. And with this is 52 weeks a year, we could get like 16 plus issues of just exploring, 16 different X-Men characters. I'm into it. I'm going to do a few more, then I'm going to check in on the chat. So if you're saying stuff, I will get a chance to highlight it and respond to it. This one, I have not read because this is different than the other Marvel Unlimiteds. First of all, the issues are way, way, way longer. The normal Marvel Unlimiteds, there might be like 40 individual pictures, but I've counted how the panels array, and they count for between 8 and 14 pages of like actual comic pages, depending on how you array them. And you can see that in one of the books that they did a physical version of the digital this week. No, this is like a whole comic book every issue. And it's really, really, really good. It's by what is his name, Anthony Oliveira, who I love. I have his book Dayspring that I need to read, prose novel, and I refuse to rush through it. I'm like on issue number 7. You're just going to hear me saying that I've read 1 or 2 a week for like the next 10 weeks until I finally catch up to present. But if you like these young characters, or if you want like it's very young Avengers. It's very kind of like Gillen and McKelvey young Avengers flavored. It's very queer. If you want that, Wiccan's not always in it. It's got like Kid Juggernaut, Bloodline, who's Blade's daughter, Moon Girl, Captain America of the Railways, Escapade, who is the one of the last characters to be invented in the Krakoa era of New Mutants. I love it. I love it. I just am not up to present. And there's 2 other books I'll have to say that about today. Barbarella. I did read some Barbarella, like maybe in 2019 or 2020, and I kind of liked it. She's kind of just like got a Star-Lord vibe where she's like in space, sleep with some people, shoot some bad guys. I historically have not really loved Blake Northcott's writing. It doesn't mean I'm not going to give her another chance, but on a title that's only like a tertiary title for me, I don't know if that's where I'm going to fall in love with Blake Northcott. So maybe if I had a week where I didn't have a lot to catch up with, I would try it, but I did not try it this week. Black Cat Canary, Best of the Best is by Tom King. Black Hammer, Spiral City is by Jeff Lemire. I actually read a ton of early Black Hammer. I think I read the whole first sequence and like into the second sequence, and it was fine. Like it didn't like vibrate my soul. And so, it's fine for comics to be fine and then to put them down. I didn't hate it actually. And I sometimes really dislike Jeff Lemire, but it was fine. Blade, unfortunately, is red banned. So I can't read it until it comes out digitally. Very sad. Okay, Catwoman. Then I'll get to some of your comics. This is by friend of Near Mint Condition, Tarun Grunbeck, with a really, this is really small again, with Mariana Ionze on art and Patricio Delpeche on colors and Steve Wands on letters. I really like this book. I really like the tone for Catwoman. She keeps it terse. Catwoman is all about little efficient movements. She's not about big showy moments. It really, really works for me. It's switched up artists a couple times. I don't love that if we're only in the 4th or 5th issue of a run, but I do really like this art style. I forgot to hit the timer. Oh well. I really, really like this art style. That's, I don't know how to describe it. Just the big splotches of color, right? That like we're not just doing like little shines and gradations and stuff. Just like look at his face and the way that there's like this lighter part and the darker part and then this darker part. It's that kind of like paint by numbers approach. I find that really, really appealing. I don't know what it's called from a coloring technique style. And I really like Catwoman going back to these people that she thought she was done with and she had burned. And she's like, gosh darn it, they like are messing with my identity. I've got to go back and deal with that some more. I find it really appealing. And I like a well-written Catwoman. It does not take me much if you've got a good voice for Selena to enjoy a Selena book. So let's see if anybody's been chatting anything while I've been away. For kids, need to check that out. I agree. Jean-Remy Argueta. Max Appleman saying Amy Mann is great. I agree. One of my favorites, as I said. Oh, because now we're kind of like back in some older comments. Got it. Okay. Tiago Pisa said best Silver Age comic from DC. I have hardly ever read any Silver Age from DC, so I do not know. That is a huge blind spot for me. I'm so excited to read the Flash Silver Age because it was the birth of the Silver Age, and because Jess Bragg, Omnidog, personally recommended it to me, but I can't actually make a recommendation for that. Can I define trope? So a trope, it's kind of one of these words that's been mutated by the internet, but the idea of a trope is it's like a theme or a cliche that is being repeated. So like it's a trope on a TV show that like, well, here's one that everybody knows, right? The gun in the first act goes off in the third, right? Chekhov's gun. It's a trope at this point. Like if you see some unfired weapon or some unused supercomputer or something in the first act or in the opening part of a movie or a play or a comic book, you know that the reason the author showed that to us is going to come back in the third act. We could call that a cliche. We could also call that a trope, right? It's a common storytelling trope. It's an individual puzzle piece. It's a specific rhythm. It can be a lot broader than that too, right? So different tropes are things like, the girlfriend's going to double cross them. If that's something that the writer always uses, or like, the hero's going to make a comedic error and get saved by their sidekick, right? And certain authors just have certain little pieces of storytelling that they use, tropes, that they put together in different ways. And I think that people have a really, really big bag of storytelling, like Zdarsky. He does repeat stuff, but not as often as a writer like Mark Russell, who like you are signed up for that trope. And I think if you like Tom King, you might just find what Tom King does really appealing, and that's his trope, that 9-panel grid, the way he over narrates everything, the way he likes repeating the same line again and again. Those are tropes, techniques, cliches, storytelling, individual Lego bricks. And if you're into them, then you're probably going to like every Tom King comic book because he very rarely deviates from them. I hate all of those things. Okay. Super Panda made it. Hello. War Crimes. You know what? It's bigger than the purview of this channel. I'm just going to say it. You can look it up yourself if you want to. Excited about the 3 additional Obsolete books. I'm absolutely looking Georgy Chimchimanov to Dennis Camp's Martian Manhunter because Dennis Camp is amazing. Oh gosh, and that was all stuff from before I started looking at comics. Okay. Just caught up on the stream. Glad to hear liking my internet name and profile picture. I do, Novaargh. It's the lead of his own comic book series you created in 2014. Still working on the first arc. Finish it so we can talk about it on this channel. Krisis says, camera needs to move to the other side. Hopefully I dealt with that. Is that Hawk the Slayer based on the film? Maybe. I didn't know there was a film. Does the film feature a sorceress who has inexplicable powers that needs to be made like non-immortal? Because if so, yes, for sure. James Abel says, Absolute Wonder Woman #4. What a great issue. So much emotion. I almost felt like a video game with some action, movement, and art. It's my best comic of the week. See, comics are for everyone. And some people different than me. I will say, if you guys love little capsule reviews, feel free to put them in. I will absolutely try to highlight them as I go. Novaargh says, having a different art and continuing issues in the same run is kind of American comics to a T, right? A sad thing when great art was the thing that you got in, and it's changing per issue. Also, I want consistent tone. Sometimes you can get away with an artist change for me if the artists alternate well, like their styles go together well, but I think colors really help that. So I think in this Catwoman run, the consistent colors are actually really helping it for me. I think colorists are so overlooked. I forget if it's this week or last. We'll get there. There's one book that there was an artist switch up and I didn't even notice, but because the colors were so consistent that it kept me in the world. And I realized later, like, oh, the artist changed. But I think colors do a lot of the tone setting. Cap Dunderman, Spider-Boy. I really am loving Spider-Boy. I hope they keep him a kid. Let 10-year-olds in comics be 10-year-olds. Let little kids, we don't need every character made into a teenager. We already did it to Miles. Let Spider-Boy remain a boy. Curse, what I think about Supergirl. She's nifty. I don't know. There's no super. I pretty much like all of the super family. We will talk about Power Girl later. Tiger Eyes, also not a fan of Frank Thierry. Patrick Borgeld, hard G or soft G. Almost missed live. To be fair, I started an hour early, so you might just be right on time right now. Having a great conversation in the chat. You know, you can read the chat even after the show's over. If you bring it up on YouTube, it'll scroll along with the show, so you can like experience it in real time. Because I think the chat adds a lot to the show. I love going back and reading it. Tyler saying 80s and 90s comics still have regular artists with an occasional guest artist as compared to now, where you know that after 3 or 5 issues, there'll be a swap for an issue or 2 before switching back. And that's why I'm so impressed with artists who can really stay on a book. And Carmen Carnero, who like only needs a break after every 5 or 6 issues. Dan Mora, who's doing 2 ongoing books right now. I think that's really, really compelling to me. James will be my substitute review for Black Canary Best of the Best. It's okay. Seems like Tom King is stretching out this idea. Green Arrow and Batman seem to be out of character. What's my favorite X-Men era? Favorite X-Men? Oh my gosh, this is like a whole video unto itself. Boom shakalaka. Favorite X-Men author, Kieran Gillen. Easy. Favorite team? I don't know. That one's hard. I love Original Generation X. I like Krakoa. Like, I don't want one team. I just want all the X-Men constantly. But I mean, I like a classic Excalibur is my favorite team. What's my favorite X-Men era? I really like the early 90s because me, of course. But I think 2008 through 2010 or 12 is like perfect. I don't think there's really any bad X-Men books. And I loved Krakoa, which, gosh, you guys are doing a lot of AMA. As a reminder, I love you. I'm so happy you're watching the show. I have to get through so many comics, so we try to do the AMA before and after, but I will answer all of your AMAs today. But if you have a lot of AMAs, I will let you know that we're like in an AMA zone, and I'll like put the banner up, and then we'll get a ton of AMAs because I don't want to miss them. Because then if I scroll back later and I see that I missed a bunch of cool questions, I'll feel super, super bad. But I love that you have questions. Which upcoming Marvel Omni are excited for? Easy, the Nom. I can't believe it's happening. I can't believe we got it that high on the poll last year. I can't believe Marvel's printing it. I want to see a good showing for it. I think it's an important comic book. I'm absolutely over the moon. A popular trope, Max Appleman says, when a female character is just added for their erotic escapades like Nanny and Hellions, or when a female character dies to make a male character feel something, which Gail Simone coined the term women in refrigerators as a name for that trope because one of Green Lantern's love interests was left dead in a refrigerator. Okay. And Nick N read Rogue the Savage Land, and it was fantastic. Yes, I don't think there's been a single person in the comments on this channel that hasn't liked it. It was that good. Fantastic art, stories, color, everything. And you know who that's by? Tim Seeley, because Tim Seeley should be writing one of the X-Men flagships. Okay. Phoenix is ending with issue 10, maybe. Well, we're going to talk about that more when we get to Phoenix. Let's keep rolling, shall we? Okay. Is that really the next comic? Okay, Creepshow. I didn't read this. This is the 3rd volume of an Image horror anthology series. Ed Brisson and Kemi Garcia wrote stuff in this issue. Horror anthology is okay. I don't always love anthology because, again, if I get really into it, I'm like, well, why can't I read anymore? So I'll pick one up if there's like a writer I really like. But the thing is, some people like Ed Brisson, I think actually do really well in anthology compared to other stuff. Oh, when you said I should move the camera over, am I totally across from it right now? Am I in one corner and that's in the other corner, or am I covered right now? Because the camera's reversed for me from what you see, so I might think I'm getting more to the side, and is my face under the comic book right now? Can somebody tell me? No, everybody's still talking about Tim Seeley and Phoenix. Covered. Okay, so I have to move more this way. That's what Tyler is. It's so weird because in my view, my face is going to be under the comic, but that's fine. I don't need to see my face. We'll figure it out. Okay, so this is better. This is better. Okay. No wonder. Tyler would never lie to me. It's just weird because I want it to be mirrored because I have so much text and sometimes I hold up books and stuff. So I want you to see the mirrored version, but then that freaks me out. Okay. Anyway, DC Horror. I did read this horror anthology comic book. So I guess I got to start the timer. I read it not because of the creators necessarily. I don't really have any allegiance to any of them, but it just, was at the end of my polls. I had time, and I really, really, really liked it. I like when DC does stories that like kind of fit into continuity, but not necessarily, not really. It really works for me. The first year was a Catwoman story that was so clever. It had really good art from Danny Earls. And it was like, the whole thing was she steals this diamond that like haunts her, but you can only have it taken from you. You can't give it away. So she tries to think of the perfect person to take it from her that will be haunted, but actually might enjoy it. So clever. Really, really liked it. That was by Patton Oswalt and Jordan Blum. And then there was a story of Matter Eating Lad from Legion of Superheroes. It was so messed up. It's by Steve Kostansky with art from Brendan Hay. It was so incredibly weird and bad, but not bad like bad to read, just like I can't even describe it. So if you like Matter Eater Lad and you just want like a random side story to one of your favorite Legionnaires, it was so gross. It's so scary and so weird. Like, what happens when zombies, and it's not really a zombie story, but just stick with me here. What happens when zombies try to eat somebody who can eat them? Just really, really clever. It's why sometimes it's worth tuning in for these anthology books. So I assume now my face is not covered, which is the goal. Okay. I don't know. First of all, this cover is amazing. Deadly Tales of Gunslinger Spawn. That cover of issue number 2 is by Marco Falia and Mark Spears, who are not the interior artists, which kind of bugs me when the cover doesn't match the interior artist, but these interior artists, Patrick Reynolds and Louis Nicht, are pretty good. Here's the thing. I actually have never really read a lot of Jimmy Palmiotti comic books. So I knew, because I just know who he is, that he does a lot of like Old Westy, Jonah Hex stuff. And in that aspect, this was really, really pleasing. I really, really like that part of it. It's got, if you want to see Spawn as a gunslinger, this works. And I'm like, why bring him into the modern day? I get it, because we wanted him on the team, the Scorch. So that's why he's in the modern day. But he's so much more. He's just another Spawn in the modern day. In the past, he's the Spawn in this gunslinger universe, and that's really, really interesting. But I am learning Palmiotti is one of these writers, trope alert, that every time he wants the hero to feel something, there's got to be or the reader, there's got to be a woman who's in sexual peril. That makes me think you are a hack who has no ideas and you need to go to therapy. So it's been 2 out of 2 issues. It's not like we've got like on page sexual assault, but I don't need that to be what you're, okay, we're in the Wild West. I get it. It was tough times. But if that's the only way you know how to make me feel like any female character is at risk, you, Jimmy Palmiotti, maybe should have a job other than comic book writing. Certainly, you're going to hear this a lot from me. It is one of the things that angers me the most. It's just like when like people at that website, Does the Dog Die? And like anytime a dog dies in a movie, they're like, did you have to kill the dog? That's how I feel like about like, oh, sexual violence. It's the scariest violence. It is, but we don't need that in our comic books. There's a time and a place for it. And to just shoehorn it into every story, because that's how you make things scary, just means that you're a terrible writer who is a hack. Okay, moving on. We have Batman Detective Comics 1093. This is the new run from Tom Taylor and Michael Jenin. I haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. Y'all, I'm addicted. I'm so into it. I love it so much. I was worried that Tom Taylor has kind of got like a pithy quality to him. He likes these quick hit issues. If you read his Nightwing and his Titans, you know what I'm talking about. So I was afraid. But Tom Taylor also wrote Deceased and Injustice. Tom Taylor could go dark. Now, this does one thing that annoys me in Batman comic books. It has a character from Batman's past that we've never met before, that we insert into his life with his parents when they were alive. And that character goes on to be a big character in this comic book. I just think that that's a very lazy way to start your Batman story. But I really like this because it's dealing with Batman contending with his mortality. Like, he's like, I am getting older. I am bruised and battered. What does that mean? What does that mean for my ability to be a superhero? What does that mean for my ability to be a parent to Damian, to all the other Robins and Bat kids, right? And this hero is really preying on that and preying on his level of responsibility for if people do get killed when he's in the line of duty. I like a Batman who makes mistakes. I like a Batman who doesn't always save the day. And I like the Bat family being a part, not always just saying, yes, Batman. Yes, I understand Batman. Like, yes, chef. Okay, chef. No, like, let them have some good ideas sometimes. Nobody's perfect. I have no interest in reading a perfect Batman. The art in this is gorgeous. I'm really engaged with the plot. The mystery is obvious. It's obvious by design. Taylor is letting us in on the mystery. ahead of Batman for a reason. If you read all of Taylor's Nightwing, Taylor seeded stuff in the first few arcs that came to fruition in the final arc. He's really good at that. So trust the process a little bit. Enjoy the art while you're going on. And if you're looking for perfect Batman where nobody gets killed on his watch, this is not that comic book. Again, sorry, I put the cover out of order. This is a new line of Marvel one-shots from J. Michael Straczynski that are pairing unlikely team-ups of comic characters, so J. Michael Straczynski can just mess up the voices of characters all across the Marvel universe. He's going to start with Dr. Doom and Rocket Raccoon. I had a lot of problems with this issue on many different levels. On this page, what's happening in this art, Will Robson and colorist Andrew Dalhouse? Andrew, you're off the hook. You did fine. Will Robson, I'm talking to you right now. I spent at least 5 minutes looking at this panel. What's happening is Rocket Raccoon parkouring off the bookshelf? Is Doom holding him with his fist? No, because Doom is holding up the wine. What Rocket's throwing his wine down. Why? The next panel just has him standing somewhere with his hands like this. Is he standing on Dr. Doom's knee? Here we see him, he's on the arm of the chair. Okay, so he's climbing up on the arm of the chair. So we needed that whole panel to see he's diving up onto, it doesn't make any sense. And there was a lot of moments like this. And I get really annoyed when artists like do something in a panel that doesn't tell a consistent story to the action and the placement in the other panel. Also, Straczynski wrote Doom kind of dumb, and Doom should be smarter and pettier. He was playing him just for laughs. Doom is funny, but you can't just make him funny. And I don't think he really had the right Rocket Raccoon. He was using Rocket Raccoon as this like super smart character, which he is super smart in tactical ways and in like weapons and wiring and physics. And this had a lot of real physics in it, like Ryan North does, which I thought was cool. But then Rocket Raccoon also is super murderous. And there were points that Doom had weapons and Rocket Raccoon was like not responding to the fact that Doom had weapons. So I'm like, Rocket's wrong, Doom's wrong, the art didn't make any sense. And we're on the verge of this Dr. Doom event. Maybe this is going to tie in, they do time travel. Ooh, maybe this is going to tie into the event somehow. But if we're on the verge of the biggest Doom story that we have for 20 years and you just do this throwaway bullshit one shot where you don't even get Doom's voice right, no, get out of here with that. And I love Babylon 5. I think J. Michael Straczynski is a great writer. I do not like when he writes Marvel comics. Sorry, I feel like always the beginning of the alphabet has things I'm much rougher on than the end of the alphabet, which is not by design. I don't think I just hate stuff that comes early. I think it just works out that way. I said nice things about those digital comics though. Drawing Blood, this is so interesting. So it's a story by Kevin Eastman, who's the originator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's not about his life, and he's not actually writing it. He just handed it to this team, including David Avalone, who I usually really like. He writes a lot of Elvira comics. But the thing is, this occupies and it doesn't look like this inside. This is Kevin Eastman of classic Ninja Turtles drawing the cover, but the insides are just like your standard image indie comic. The thing that's weird about it is it's actually so similar to, I should have started the timer, so similar to Chip Zdarsky's Public Domain, which I love, one of my favorite comics. But this is so much more fanciful. Like it's this down on his luck comic creator, but we're like jumping into that story so many decades in because he sold his big IP. And so now, but he's like made all these big money deals. He doesn't have the money anymore. But we're, instead of seeing like the interesting part of that, where he's like kind of struggling with his creation and how he feels about selling it, we've like fast forwarded to like, he's into money with the mob. He's trying to produce a Broadway musical. It's just too far afield for me. I really like Public Domain because it's actually about the business of making comic books. Kevin Eastman certainly knows a lot about that, and I just think that I would be more entertained by this if I was seeing a story that was like 5 or 10 years prior. It's not bad, it's actually pretty good. I read the first issue and then I think I read issue 6 to see if I was like gonna maybe like it more when it was farther in. It's fine. It's just not my comic book. Personally, I think Chip Zdarsky's Public Domain is a little bit better. If you want Public Domain with like a little bit more of that mob aspect that Public Domain had, then you should read this. I totally missed this week. I would have read it. I'm really into these EC comics brought back to life. This is an EC horror anthology. It's called Epitaphs from the Abyss. I should have picked it up. I totally missed it. Now we're on to Fantastic Four, the first of the One World Under Doom tie-ins by Ryan North. This is my first opportunity, I think, to talk about Ryan North's Fantastic Four. This had art by Stephen Cummings with inks from Wayne Faucher, colors from Jesus Abertov, and letters by Joe Caramagna. This issue, I went on a journey. First of all, the art, Stephen Cummings, hats off to you, dude. You killed it. I love this invisible woman dragging Reed up the stairs, and he's still sitting. She's still dragging him. She's still dragging him. Finally, the back of his body whips behind them. Love. But the ability to do this huge psychedelic stuff with Doom, too. Also love that. I really like this. And the whole trope was that they go to Black Knight because Mr. Fantastic's been trying to understand magic better because they know they have to do something to figure out what Doom is up to as the Sorcerer Supreme. Black Knight acts super out of character. I noticed it immediately, but there's a reason. Then they do time travel and they get to do archaeology, which I love because I love that Ryan North remembers that that's what Sue's degree is in. And then they run into Dr. Doom and they have like an awesome confrontation with Dr. Doom, and it all is a single issue story. I love Ryan North's one and dones. I love how smart it is. I love when it brings in real science. And this was another one of the best Fantastic Four stories I've ever read, which there are now like 6 of in this 20, however many issue run. So good job, Ryan North. Love this title. One of my favorite Marvel books. That was issue 28. So 6 out of 28 issues have been some of my favorite Fantastic Four stories of all time. That's quite a hit rate. Okay, now we are on to The Flash by Cy Spurrier. This book is really interesting. So this is Cy Spurrier writing with art by Vasco Georgiev, colors by Matt Herms, love the colors, and letters by Hassan Otsman Elio. The initial 13 issues of this Flash book were like all on story, big ideas. Like there's angels that live above time and above space and that are like have opinions on time, but then time is distorted. And how does that reflect on the Flashes in our reality? It got a little too big brained for me at a point. I started losing it. Really amazing art the whole time. And if you love Spurrier comics and you love Flash and you love when Flash is like hard sci-fi, you're just going to love it. Slather it all over your body. This has pivoted so hard. This is fun family adventure Flash. It's like Wally West's family and his kids, and they're in wherever that place is that Warlord lives. I don't know what it's called. It's not Tartarus, but it's something like that. And then Eclipso is there too, and Eclipso is like chewing scenery. I love that. I love it. I love the Flash kids. I love Flash having a family. I love it being a family book instead of a hard sci-fi book. I get the feeling though that that's like 2 different kinds of Flash fan. That's like me who really likes the like family goofier side of Flash, and then the people who want like the hardcore sci-fi like Morrison type of Flash. And I don't know if Spurrier can serve both masters throughout this whole run, but I'm really enjoying it right now. I think it's a cute comic. It's paced well. It's scripted well. It makes me feel things. I have no idea what Gotchaman is. It's some kind of IP, right? Colin Bunn's writing it for Mad Cave. Are they Power Rangers? They look like birds. Are they Power Bird? Is it what is it? Voltron? Like what is the story? Somebody in the chat must know what Gotchaman is. Okay, G.I. Joe. I mentioned earlier that I get my big nostalgia for G.I. Joe. This is Larry Hama G.I. Joe. So you need to understand your G.I. Joe nomenclature. G.I. Joe Real American Hero is the same G.I. Joe series and continuity and characters from 1982. It's been across multiple publishers. It was with IDW for years, but this is still those original characters. This is not part of the Energon universe. That's the new G.I. Joe book. If it says Real American Hero, it's the original book. So I haven't read all, the original book, by the way, is the one that did the Kickstarter. I have not read the whole original book. I've read a smattering of issues from the original book, but I know my G.I. Joe really, really well. It's so cool. Larry Hama is using so many Joes, but it's really kind of a Cobra book because we're looking at like Serpentor and Mindbender versus Cobra Commander, who's the mayor of his own town in Springfield, versus Destro and his kind of thing, versus this AI that they all created together and now is kind of like their shared custody baby. Also, there's the Dreadnoks and then also the G.I. Joes. So they're almost like a supporting character. Chris Mooneyham's art is so cool. Colorists, this is the book with the changing art, same colors. Francesco Segala, and they actually credit the flatter, Sabrina Del Grosso. I love that. They continued to be the colors in the flatter while Paul Pelletier took over for an in-between arc. And even though Pelletier draws a much, much cleaner style than Chris Mooneyham, much closer to Alan Davis, it still really worked for me. It took me like a whole issue to realize it wasn't the same penciler. It's just fun. If you know the G.I. Joe characters and the G.I. Joe toys, no issue will disappoint you. I like how Larry Hama will like deep dive into like military, like this is the gun and this is the bullet and this is how we're dropping and it has all this lingo. And then we'll go into like 2 pages of like ninjas and then we'll go into interpersonal stuff. It's just really, really fun. Incredibly toyetic. I binged this all this week. I thought I was going to just read one issue and be like, hey guys, I know a little bit about G.I. Joe now. No, I sat down, I bought it all. I read all up to the current. I freaking love it. Here's the other thing. This is way longer than a minute. Whatever. I love this comic book. During the IDW years, they didn't really have great artists on the book. And I feel like no fault to them, but it was a smaller book. That wasn't a big moneymaker. And I don't think they were letting Larry Hama tell the stories of the size that he could be telling, because the artist, I don't think, could handle it. So the couple of times I dropped in on it in those years, it was very small, like counterterrorism stories, which works for J. Joe. Totally works. But this one, he's got these like heavy, big artists that would be on like a big Marvel or DC book or like a flagship Image book. So the scope of the stuff that Larry Hama can tell, the invasion of Springfield by the Joes and Destro and Serpentor all at once, it's big, it's pleasing. I love it. Okay, this is Tom Scioli's Godzilla's Monsterpiece Theater. Godzilla is like a story trope, kaiju that just does not ring for me. I have no like personal allegiance to it, so I did not read this one, but if anybody's read it in the comments, let me know and I will highlight your comment as we keep talking. This is Green Arrow. It's by a new team. Chris Condon, who's also writing Ultimate Wolverine, drawn by Montos, who drew the Green Lantern War Journal series, which looked incredible, even though the story was crap. And the colors here, I have to highlight Adriano Lucas, who's really coloring against type. He's usually much more neon than this, but he's going like really primary and really saturated. And then letters also by Hassan Otsman Elio. I friggin' love this book. I love it. It's like just out of my top 10. I'm into it. I want it. It's so cool. I'll start the timer now since I'm going to clearly go off about this one. It's Green Lantern, like back to the urban level, back to the street level, back in his city, just trying to look into one crime, but it's a crime that he's maybe a little okay with. It's this person who's killing industrialists who have like polluted things, and he's killing them by making them drink water. And Green Arrow's like actually kind of clever, if I have to say so myself, but he's still going to solve it because it's like a murder. Okay, look how green the green is. That's so pleasing to me. Saturated all the way, pump it all the way up. So they've kind of caught this potential murderer, but there's something more to it. It's not your typical supervillain. And Green Arrow is like stuck in the middle because he's one of these industrialists. He briefly was in charge of the company who caused a lot of these crimes, but he's like this big liberal leftist who also wants to take down these kind of people. And so he's not torn. He doesn't actually want them to die, but everybody that's died are people that he thinks like were bad people. It's just, it's so pleasing. It's one of those things that's exactly what I want from Green Arrow, and I'll take a lot of different things from Green Arrow. I like the family fun Green Arrow that Josh Williamson was doing before this, but I think this really holds up well. If you like older Green Arrow, if you like kind of a little more tense Green Arrow, Kevin Smith Green Arrow, Mike Grell Green Arrow, give this a chance because it is really working for me. Okay. Grim Fairy Tales, I'm always back on my Zenoscope BS, my friends. This actually was a great example of a one-shot Grim Fairy Tales story, so I'm happy to recommend it to you. It's issue number 92, Thumbelina by they have a whole brain trust. Joe Brusha, Ralph Tedesco, and Dave Franchini, written by Dave Franchini, artwork by Jordi Tarragona, colors by Jorge Cortez, and letters by Taylor Esposito. This was everything I like about Grim Fairy Tales. Sky, who's our main protagonist, who has like a connection to all these fairy realms, goes somewhere and meets a new superhero who 9 times out of 10 is a woman who is based on fairy tales but given a twist. This time she meets Thumbelina, who basically it's a riff on Marvel's Microverse and like Micronauts and everything that happens in the Microverse. So she's like a princess from another planet, but she's in the Microverse, but she's in our real life. And Sky, when she goes to help her, finds the sleeping princess, but when she tries to awaken the princess, they get sucked into the Microverse. It's just a really fun, like super colorful, it almost feels like a Fantastic Four issue, but with magic. And it's a one shot. But the great thing that they do is they'll always be like, but this might come back later. And that's why I like Grim Fairy Tales. This is exactly why I read this comic book. Fun, magical, fairy tales, female protagonists. I'm in. Okay. Trying to respect the timer. This is my first chance to talk about the new Harley Quinn. I was on my D&D this weekend with all my friends from college, and they were saying one of them listened to Elliot Kalan's podcast. I had no idea that existed. I knew him as the writer of Spider-Man and the X-Men, a hilarious 7-issue series from late in Marvel now. I love his Harley Quinn. I think he has the perfect combination. I think Harley Quinn's, she's got to be funny. She's got to be a little bit tough. She's got to tell some jokes. But she's also got to be likable and like relatable. The whole point is that she's like a kind of a realer person in this ridiculous Batman world, but she's also a cartoon. That's what makes us love her. I think Elliot Kalan has nailed it. The whole conceit of this is they've gentrified her old, terrible neighborhood. So now she is going to go back and try to de-gentrify it to how she remembers it, except for by kind of de-gentrifying a gentrified neighborhood, is she just like another level of gentrification? What about the people who are living there now who likes it? Or is she just saying not in bad outside backyard? Are some of the things in this neighborhood good? I think the art is so funny. Mindy Lee is killing it. Trona Farrell, the one complaint I have about this book, Trona Farrell's colors are so saturated, which I love a saturated color. Give it to me. Sometimes when there's a lot of action, I start to lose the foreground a little bit because the background is so busy. But you know what? Really good and really, really readable letters from Lucas Gattoni too that really like allowed the jokes to be sold. I know not every Harley fan is super, super into this, and I'm not the #1 Harley fan, but this ticks all the boxes for me about what I really, really love about Harley. Okay, why don't I briefly check in on the comments because I feel like I've been leaving you all alone for a while. I don't want to be an absentee parent. Okay, let's see where we left off. Georgie Chimchimov liked the issue. Reminded me of Silver Age Spidey when he will have a fit about quitting only to ultimately come around and be a hero. Yeah, that's why I like that issue of Amazing Spider-Man 2. It didn't feel like he was moping just to mope. It felt like he moped and we got to understand him better and his plot better and his feelings better and the characters around him better. That's what I want. Like, I'm not against characters having emotions. Like, that's a good thing. But I'm like, serve the story with the characters having emotions, which I think that absolutely did. USM James Abel liked Ultimate Spider-Man this week. I cannot say if I liked it or not because we're not that far into the alphabet. But James Abel about Catwoman 72, the last time I had this much fun with the Catwoman series was Ed Brubaker's run, enjoying the cat and mouse game. Couldn't have said it better myself. I got to learn to not scroll up quite so far. We talked about that already. Okay, that's where we go. Dark Phoenix says Phoenix ending is not confirmed at all. Well, you know what? One funny thing about me is I do not follow solicits at all, except for being on the solicit show on Near Mint Condition. So if something's like solicited to maybe end, like I never, ever am aware of that until it happens or until I do a guide. And then I realize that like the series is over. Okay. Crisis Stream saves another work night for Hank. Thank you, Hank. Max actually helped me try to decipher what was going on with Parkour Raccoon on that panel, and I still could not figure it out. Logan Wayne, sorry he's late catching what he missed on replay and happy to be here now. Happy that you're here as well, always, so that you can spend some time with me, Logan. Novaargh says Rocket should not be smarter than Doom. That's weird. It's like making Tony smarter than Reed. Yeah, I think the conceit that JMS was going to was that Rocket is very good at this very specific physics thing, and Doom would never ask Reed because Reed is better at physics than Doom, so Reed asked Rocket, and like I can see that there. I just think in execution, it kind of got a little bit lost. Eric Garza says, good context on Tom Taylor. Concerned that his writing on Detective Comics might be a little too surface level and saccharine for a book like Tech. I don't think it is. I think he shifted gears really well. I think he's still kind of a quick writer, like issues go by quickly, but when you have Mikhail Janin art, there's plenty to linger on, and I think that kind of evens it out a little bit. Larry's Library, hello, my good friend. Loved the first trade paperback of Drawing Blood, a gift from Jewish Dragons. Loved it. So good. Yeah, I think it's a really good comic. I think it's just, since it's not my like #1 bread and butter kind of thing that I love, I think public domain just hits me, scratches that itch so much better for me that I didn't get as excited about Drawing Blood. Max Appelman says FF was his favorite book this week. Not my favorite, but definitely one that I really, really loved. Double Down Slot say I'm looking good today. Thank you so much. Flattery, as we've established on this channel, will get you everywhere. Let's see. I think I did a really good job today. I think my face looks really good. Doing that 6 streams in 9 days really, really helped me to learn how to look correct for the camera. Nick N just bought volume 1 of North's Fantastic Four. Shall start tonight. For people, Omnidog was talking about a lot. He did a show with Aussie Bo and the Aussieverse yesterday, and they were talking about many, many different issues. Nick N says Flash has been difficult. Great for Wally, but it's hard to follow. I think issues 1 through 13 were really hard to follow. I think this is much easier to follow, so I'm interested to know if you still find it's hard to follow post issue 13, or if you, but man, that art on the first 13 issues, God, it was so good. Gotcha Man is based on an anime from the 1970s. James knows more than me. It's fascinating. Knows so much. Cruel Angel says Gotcha Man is an original anime, the Battle of the Planets cartoon. Oh, I know Battle of the Planets. Okay. I feel like I was like lost in like a state that I've never driven in before, and I just found like the interstate that I'm familiar with. In the US, Gotcha Man went under Battle of the Planets. Everybody knows this except for me. Novaargh knows it. Larry Library knows it. Larry Library says, Larry Hama is a fascinating character in his own right. I agree. If you have never seen his interview in Your Mint Condition, really, really cool. He knows guns and martial arts, among other things. Also, he does really cool cultural stuff for the characters in his comics where there's one Filipino character and he always makes sure he inserts a little bit of Tagalog for that Filipino character just in conversation, which if you have any Filipino friends, you've heard in your life before. So I just really, really like that. Elon, I'm so happy to see you on my channel in the comments, friend. We've never been on a stream together, I don't think. Have we? I don't think. We should correct that sometime soon. Novaargh, the detailed gear lingo sounds like the guy that did Gunsmith Cats. He loved going to details of weapons and cars all the time. Found it hilarious reading and watching it happen in anime. Yeah, Larry Hama to me can really do very little wrong. And the thing is, he's got tropes. He's got his things that he goes. Some of the stuff repeats. There's a little bit of cat and mouse. There's a little bit of rubber banding. But with Larry Hama, like it's never going to be easy. He's never going to go for the easy sympathy or the easy win. It's always going to be complex. He really doesn't like to kill the Joes too much because it's toyetic and you want them to always bounce back. So that's a little bit disappointing because sometimes you're like, oh, well, they're in danger, but they're not like really in danger. But he still finds scary things to do to the characters. And I think that's actually really a gift. Nick N. loving Green Arrow. Yeah, I'm Chris Condon. I didn't like his one image book, so I wasn't sure I was going to like him, but I'd only read that one thing. So I didn't want to be like, no, I don't like this guy. But everything else I've read since then has been like just killing me. Tiger Eyes has started reading G.I. Joe based off the new compendium. I could not get in the newer book, but can't wait to get up to 300s. And the great thing is you could just start with 300 or 301. I forgot which one it actually started with, 301 probably. And it would totally make sense. Like Hama is a master. He gives you everything you need, but there's so much stuff that gets you to this point. And he refers to a lot of, also, he's so smart, Larry Hama. He does a lot of things that refer specifically to the end of the Marvel run. So even if you had only read to 155 at Marvel and are picking this up, he like bases so many plot points off of what happened right at the end of the Marvel run that like actually that makes sense too. He's so good. And I just love it. I love that it's back. I love that it's got great art. I can't wait to get the compendiums. I didn't go in the Kickstarter because the shipping to New Zealand was so expensive that I was like, I have to just get these as paperbacks through Diamond, even though I want it so bad. But the shipping was like 4 times what it would be to just get it shipped to me issue by issue or book by book. James Abel says Harley Quinn 47, the series is getting worse and worse. No, I completely disagree. I enjoyed the first issue at Late Rope, but the last few feel like a Saturday morning cartoons that aired on Fox Kids. I could not disagree with James more here. We are not together on this one. I do not endorse James's opinions, but I do still appreciate James's opinions. No, I love this. This is one of my favorite Harley Quinn books ever. But what I've discovered is I like a very different thing about Harley Quinn than everybody else. I don't really like Palmiotti and Amanda Connor, so those never hit for me. I actually liked when Sam Humphries was writing her. I liked her in Poison Ivy. I think I'm looking for something different from the character than a lot of. I should do a small segment on D&D. How many segments are you trying to get me to put in this show, Tyler? It's already 2.5 hours long. I got to go to a new kid orientation day at Kid Crisis in school. But I agree. I would love to do live play, even if it's one session. I really want to get Just Bragg to do it. I'd love to do it with Odfell. But then my party that I do live play with, I mean, we're not like good like Dimension 20, but we all did college theater and some of them were like professional musicians and actors. So when we're on point, it's really, really funny. And I keep saying like, we could be a podcast. We could be doing this online for people to see. So maybe I'll convince them one time to let me run a one shot because I had never DM'd before I did my current campaign, and our forever DM, who's been our DM since 2002, needed a break. And I was like, I'll do a couple sessions. I've always wanted to. And then I discovered I love it. So I think maybe we'll get like a one shot of D&D live play by the end of this year. I don't know. I got to hype them up on it. Do you get all these books digital? Yes, I only read digitally. I don't get any new comics physically. That's why I'm not reading the red bands. And when stuff doesn't go on sale digitally, there'll be a couple that I couldn't find digitally. I just can't read them. Which reminds me, there was one book last week. We'll come back to it. North's FF is so great so far. How's Sloth's Run? Terrible. A bit behind. Skip it. He did cool things with The Thing. I think it was obvious that The Thing is his favorite of the 4 of them, and he developed The Thing really well. The Thing's kids are adorable. He did great stuff with Alicia Masters. It's really, really clear that he does not have a feel for Reed and Sue, especially not Sue. Reed and Sue are just like wrong the whole run, and it's fine. Slott loves Torch and Thing, but I think when you write Fantastic Four, you really have to have a pretty good idea of how all 4 of them interact together and what they all bring to it. And if you make Reed too mean or Sue too sappy or whatever, like the balance gets off. And I think North really understands what they're all for, and I think that's why it works. I'm not in the Omnidora Discord. I try to stay out of Discord because I read so many comics. I think I read like several hundred comics last week. I literally do not have time to be on Discord because I will disappear down that rabbit hole, and I love everybody, and I want to talk, and I want to react to every comic. If I react to every comic that I read for 10 minutes, then I'm not going to read as many comics. That's why I have the timer on the show. Hello to Chris Brogan. Elan Reese. Am I saying, is it Elan? I want to say Elan, but I know I'm thinking of what your accent is. So it's probably like Elan, but is it like Elan? I want to say Elan. So let me know, because I like to do things right. Yes, Thomas Judge is live with us this week. Struggling through Harley Quinn and Rebirth. Definitely not for me. Okay, I thought you were saying the current series. I struggled at the beginning of Rebirth. Then later I liked it. Heavy AD&D guy that's different from ADHD back in the day, 40 years ago. I first played it. It's not quite within reach. I don't want to like untether myself, but I first played 2nd edition AD&D. So that was like 35 years ago. People are asking for the D&D scream. JC Brules, I think we're saying hello to you for the first time this stream, saying, because I noticed what looks like the new Historia on my shelf. It is oversized. Do I have an omnibus? Here's X-Men Executioner Song. Here's Historia. Historia's actually bigger, because Black Label books have a slightly different dimension. I'm trying to get far enough away. So it's actually a little bit taller and a little bit wider than a standard oversized book. Absolutely gorgeous. And you know that I do not buy new comics generally. I think digital is fine. The digital was almost like overwhelming. I needed to read it physically. Okay, so here's the thing I'm going to do. I'm going to click this comment and then I'm going to unclick it. But then maybe if I star it, maybe then I'll be able to find it again, because I'm having a lot of trouble getting back to where I was in the comments. Okay. Y'all, we got to continue because I got to go to this new student orientation thing. Okay, Wolverine. Thank you. By the way, thank you for being a friend. I love this. I love getting to talk about comics with all of you. Okay, 7 seconds, very well spent. This is Wolverine by Ben Percy. And Raphael Yanko, who is the artist on the spectacular Darth Vader by Greg Pak, I discovered is how you say that. Colors from Brian Valenza, letters by Travis Lanham. I love Dakin Akihiro. I love it. I love my bisexual murder son. I would read anything with him in it. I liked the first issue of this because it felt like Benjamin Percy was going to write an Akihiro comic book that was incidentally a Ghost Rider comic book, because I feel like Ben Percy's Ghost Rider, it's just like he's trying to make it too edgy and scary. Skeletons on skeletons being built as a skeleton structure, as you can see at the top of this page. And it felt like we were going to get like a comic about like Dagon getting acquainted with the idea of vengeance when he's wronged so many people. No, it's kind of the same ongoing Ghost Rider thing that Penn Percy's been doing. So I'm reading it. And the thing is, I love Raphael Yanko's art, and Valenza colors him really well. I mean, this page here with the fire claws and the fire Wolverine mask, holy crap, is that a great image. So I'm reading it because I love my bisexual murder son, and I'm reading it because the art is good. But it's fine. It's not a story that you like need to write, and it's very reliant on the past couple of series. Like there was another Wolverine series in 2024. This is called The Hexiles. It's Cullen Bunn doing horror for Mad Cave. I caught up on a lot of Mad Cave this week. I read the first issue. It's fine. It's about this guy went around. He had lots of kids, but he was like half demon or magical or something. So they're all magical, but now they're being hunted. It was fine. It was one of those ones where I read the first issue and I was like, great pilot episode, really pleasing. I don't really need to know anything more. But if that sounds cool to you, and if Cullen Bunn's horror stuff has appealed to you, because I actually almost always will check out at least one issue of him doing horror. I think he's way better at horror than superhero. If you've enjoyed him doing horror, you might like this. So support it, but just wasn't my thing. Hour of the Wolf. So there's this really great Mad Cave series that I love called Wolvenheart. That it's so stupid. It's like exactly the stupid that I love. It's like vampires and werewolves, but they're vampires and werewolves from the Victoria era, but they also are in a war between vampires and werewolves, and they also are traveling through time. Like, sold. I will read 5,000 issues of that comic book. But so I think Mark London is trying to like make a universe, a shared universe around them. We know I'm a whore for what? Shared universes. But I didn't really understand what this was about. Like I read the issue 1. It's about one Wolvenheart operative who's inspecting this painting that's cursed and is maybe killing people. It was like too far afield. I'm like, it wasn't enough of what I liked about Wolvenheart to make me like it. And I think if you want to read a cool wolf secret time agent, you should just read Wolvenheart. There was just nothing specific enough that made me want to keep reading it. Hyde Street. I also read the number 1 of this. This is Geoff Johns. I know Jeff, but I say Geoff. Crisis lore. It's how I say the name Jeff. Geoff Johns, Ivan Rice, and Danny Miki on colors, and Brad Anderson, or Danny Miki inks, Brad Anderson colors, Rob Lee letters. I'll start the timer. I read issue 1. It's not for me, and not just because it's Geoff Johns, but it just felt like like a complete pilot episode that I was happy to just let go. I think many of you will like it though. So there's this street, Hyde Street. It could be a street anywhere that you live. It's like Sesame Street. It's just around the corner. It could be in any town. And people wander onto Hyde Street when they have done something wrong. And people are trapped on Hyde Street when they've done something wrong, but they decide to almost kind of become ghost riders and get vengeance on people who've done similar things wrong in their lives. And so it follows this one guy who's kind of like a Mad Men ad agency guy who's just a horrible, horrible person and was mean to kids on top of that. So the little kid demon sucks him in. So now he's there too, being a demon. And there's also this demon scoreboard that is keeping track of how they're all doing. Now, you know me, I like big stories. I like ongoing stuff. I like shared universe. So the demon scoreboard part was really appealing to me. But the book itself is kind of like anthology horror, but with like a light issue to issue character tie. And for Jeff Johns, who's not one of my favorite writers, that's not enough to keep me hooked. However, if you like Jeff Johns and you like that concept, you are going to die for this. The other thing is, I love Ivan Rice. To me, he's like the modern Alan Davis. I think he draws a lot like Alan Davis, but in a much more kind of modernized digital world way. I think Brad Anderson is coloring him too squeaky shiny on this book, and it's not right for horror. I need it. I want some grit and texture in my colors in a horror book. Seeing so much like shine and gloss and everything took me out of it being scary. So it's good, and I think many of you would like it. It did not hit for me, so I did not read this issue 3. I only read issue 1. I totally missed this in Bloom by Boom Studios. I think maybe I just saw the front and I thought it was like a mob book, but then looking closer, a lot of them are growing flowers out of their faces, and it's written by Michael Conrad, who I generally like a lot. So I think I'm gonna have to catch up for this for the next issue. Iron Man, oh boy. This is by Scott Ackerman, who's a journalist. This one has art from Javier Pina, who's not the normal artist. Usually it's Julius Ota, and Alex Sinclair coloring it, and Rod Rice does one spread, and Joe Caramagna letters it. I hate this comic book. I hate it. But I like the story. I actually often like the art. I just think the execution is off. It starts out with this concept that like Iron Man had to use Mysterium in his armor at the end of the Krakoan age. And so now he's like working with a mystical aspect to his armor, but he's not used to that and he can't troubleshoot it. So when it goes wrong, he doesn't know how to fix it. But we're also doing this big corporate takeover plot, and like, you know, how Orcus took over Stark, but then he wants to take it back, but that's going to mean stopping them from making weapons, but people are profiting off of making weapons. And then we're also doing this kind of like, let's try to do one issue at a time. Let's do one issue in Hell. Let's do one issue with Ironheart. It's just not working for me. Like none of the ideas are baked enough. And so they all just feel temporary or like not fully explored. And then we get like stuck in these long lugubrious scenes of them like trying to like explain it enough for it to click. And then just as it's like starting to click, it's like topic shift. Now we need magical armor. Topic shift. Now we're going to Hell. And I don't like Alex Sinclair's colors. I think the colors are too like 2010s. Like everything's got like these little shine on the nose. Like leave that to the drag queens. Like just give me like the armor can be shiny, but then let the people look different so that the shininess of the armor works. I want this run to work. I'm rooting for it, but I've really hated every issue of it so far. Also, it started in a terrible way. I think the issue number 1 was a bad number 1 script. Justice League Unlimited by Mark Waid and Dan Mora and the crew. Also Tamara Bonvillain, who, as I say, a lot of what you like about Dan Mora is Tamara Bonvillain's colors, and Ariana Maher just followed me on Blue Sky, doing the letters. This run is so good. It's so good. It's so good. I didn't even start the timer. What if I just hit it so good for 60 seconds? The Justice League is everybody. That's why it's unlimited. It's not unlimited like Marvel Unlimited, where it comes out once every 3 months or it's like online. It means every character on Earth is fair game. The Trinity's there, but there's some, and Mr. Terrific's there, but there's such a wide range of characters. And they're trying to deal with global problems. And some of the global problems are going to be one-shot problems, and some of them are going to be continuing problems. But then they've also got problems happening in the Watchtower, which are getting developed in all these other books, like the Atom Project, like All Along the Watchtower with the Question, right? Like the Black Lightning book. It's just so well done. It's got a big cast. It's so big and bold and colorful. I like the drama. I think Waid is doing the right things with the characters in their limited panel time. I love that he brought in Dr. Occult. Like, it's so much fun. I think Waid, that's why I get frustrated when Waid does all these like continuity retconny books. I'm like, you're this good. Like, live in the present. Give us more of these characters. Have characters like Red Tornado, who hasn't been featured very heavily for decades. Like, give us that in the present day. I love this book. I will read it month in, month out and totally love it. I will say it got a little mired in some of the Atom Project plot that I was like, well, can't we do that we have a whole book called The Atom Project. So hopefully this was kind of just like an advertisement for how interesting that book was. It was a nice little scene with Plastic Man, but like, I just want to read that plot in that book. Like, I love that. I kind of wish they were all called Justice League. It probably should have been like Justice League, The Question, Justice League, and Adam Project does have Justice League in the title, and then Justice League Black Lightnings. The four of them really tie closely together, and The Flash actually ties in with it too. But I'm so enamored with it. I love it so much. I haven't been reading Kid Venom. It is specifically not in continuity, and it's in like 1972 Japan, but it's not even our 1972 Japan. I was looking at reviews of online, and people have been savaging it, like more than I savage things. So that always makes me suspicious. When somebody hates something that much, I'm like, it might actually be good to me. Usually when people like pile onto something, actually I wind up liking it, not just in a perverse I like what you don't like way. Now I've been spoiled because I know people are piling onto it, but I often find that I'll like something everybody hated. I'm like, why? I don't understand. So anyway, I haven't read it. Maybe I'll read it when it's collected. King Spawn was scheduled for this week, and I kept checking, and like, I was like, maybe it's just late. And then at the last minute, they changed the date on Amazon to be next week. So it didn't actually come out this week. Lawfuls by Greg Pak with Diego Galindo and Irma Navilla. This has a really good concept, and it just didn't quite click for me, but you might really like it. So I want to tell you what it's about. It's about this city that has this curse on it, and it's semi-medieval, but a little bit modern. And the curse helps keep them safe. But the curse is that every time you do anything wrong, you become a little bit monstrous, right? So it's kind of like James Tynion's Wind, but everybody can become monstrous. And it's part of the enchantment on the city. So if you steal something, if you lie, if you cheat on a test, first you might get some scales, then you might just get a little hint of a nub of a tail, but over time you become a full monster. And the city oppresses the monsters. So and to them, they're like, well, that's a good thing, right? We want everybody to be good. So we're only oppressing bad people. But of course, there's more than it's cracked up to be. And they're being fascists, and, there's layers. It's actually super compressed. Like, things happen so fast. And I think I was so into the whole system of the city that when I realized it was going to like focus on this one character and really take us on a journey with him in specific, I was like, oh, actually, I wanted this to be more like Black Hammer and just like luxuriate in the world of it. And when it got really focused on the one character, I was like, not as interested. But actually, it's a really good book. Life is by Dust Realty, so I'm not reading it. Liquid Kill. I don't even remember what published this was from. I really like the cover, but it just, I didn't look into it deeply. I think, you know why? Because it said number 10, but then when I actually looked into it, it was like issue 4, volume 2, issue 4. I'm like, too much math. I have 45 comics to read already. I'll come back to you later when I'm more caught up on my other comics. Little Batman. I didn't read this, but it's so interesting because if you look, it's ages 13 plus, but it's telling the story of this kid of Batman who is also Batman. I don't know that it's Damien or not. And it's got this like really cartoony art, but it's like teen plus. So I'm like, who's it for then? I guess it's for like adults who like little kids who are like evil, mischievous. I don't know. So I didn't read it. Sorry. Great graphic design on the cover. Mark Miller's The Magic Order is my favorite Mark Miller series, but I am not caught up to series 5. I think I'm still in the middle of like series 2 or the beginning of series 3. So this is just not something I'm going to read week to week. Now we're to something I actually read, Marvel Rivals. This wraps up this initial 6-issue run on Marvel Unlimited from Marvel Rivals, written by Paul Allor, art by Luca Claretti, colors by D. Conniff, letters by Joe Sabino. This is exactly what you want from Marvel. I mean, it did the thing that you want. It like put a little story around Marvel Rivals and let us see some people do some fighting. It was funny. It showed off the new character designs, and it hinted at all of the other characters who are going to show up in the game in future seasons and who are already shown up. Fantastic Four was like the first on kind of like extra release, and they are teased at the end of this. If you've been playing Marvel Rivals, read it. If you just want to read like a silly beat 'em up comic for free in your Marvel Unlimited, read it. Otherwise, not a whole lot else to say. Metamorpho, The Element Man by Al Ewing. So this is Al Ewing being goofy. I think people forget how funny Al Ewing can be because he usually is so heavy, but he's actually really silly, funny, great sense of humor. This is Al Ewing with Steve Lieber on art. Steve Lieber sells this kind of like Silver Age, Bronze Age funny book stuff so well. Lee Luffridge on great colors and Ferran Delgado on letters. The thing is, this kind of, I didn't know if it could figure out what it was, which is kind of the point. Like, Al Ewing is kind of trying to do all of the Silver Age tropes, like do a little bit of adventure, do a little bit of a romance comic, do a little bit of a swinging 60s thing. But this does establish that it is in current continuity because it references a couple things happening elsewhere in DC. I think if you love that kind of vibe of those like imitated 60s books that are so silly and really wordy, there's so many words on the page, it'll take you so long to read this, so it's worth the money. I think it'll really work for you. I think this one, I just couldn't decide what it was about in a way that wasn't really, really pleasing, but I'm not like dropping it. I loved the number 1. So I'm still totally into it. And if you like that kind of comic, I think you will also like it. I am hard pressed to name a comic I read this week that I hated more than Mystique. I've not been a fan of this series in general, but this issue was so incredibly bad, so stupid, so pointless. Declan Shalvey, what are you doing? So first of all, it's a S.H.I.E.L.D. book that Mystique happens to be in. Fine, I got over that already. But the whole conceit is that Fabian Cortez is amping up her powers, so now she can be mutants if she wants to and use their DNA, which works because she does copy people to the DNA level. But where's the fun of Mystique being Mimic or being like, why? She's Mystique. Let us see her being Mystique. If you start letting her using everybody's powers, she's not the character we already like. And then the first example they use is Juggernaut, where she gets all those powers. Juggernaut, unless they changed it recently, and sorry if I missed the retcon, is not a mutant. Then they have her be mutants that are things that she can do. She's Marrow, so she could throw bones, which is stupid. She's so much deadlier than Marrow to begin with, and it would be fine if we were in the middle of the fight and she changed the Marrow because she's like, oh, I dropped my weapon. Let me take out a bone. But no, Declan Shalvey's script is so fucking stupid that she's just Marrow the whole time, and we don't even get to see her turn into Marrow or from Marrow. What is the point? 0 stars. This is Null Hunter. It's by Michael Walsh. It's like Hercules, but told as cyberpunk space opera. It's pretty cool, but I kind of just, I read the first issue. I'm like, this is neither Hercules nor space opera. Like, it just didn't really feel like it was either to me. I don't know. What is Keenspot? Is it, I think it's physical because I found this image on previews, but so they're like a publisher, but I thought they were like a digital. Anyway, Papa Duke, don't know what it's about. This is a new image book, L. Frank Baum's The Patchwork Girl of Oz. It's actually directly adapting Oz by Otis Frampton. Love it. Probably will get it for my kid. I love direct adaptions of Oz. Now we get to talk about Phoenix. This one's really tough for me because I love this plot. Like Phoenix versus Thanos, pump it into my veins. I'm totally into it. I like David Curiel's one of my favorite colors at Marvel. I think he's great colors. Love that red on Sif. Sif should always be red. Love that costume. I think Marco Renna's doing great art here. I think the problem is Stephanie Phillips will not let us spend time with Jean Grey. Like, let's get to know our lead character. As soon as we start to get Jean Grey's campaign against Thanos and get away from this other character narrating all the time, Aldani, then we got like 1 issue to enjoy that. And now she's got a team. Also, I don't buy that these are the people that she would ask for help. I totally don't buy her relationship with Carol Danvers. I like it. But how does Jean know Carol Danvers? Only from when Carol was on the Guardians and Jean was a teen and all new X-Men? I don't really know. Same for Rocket Raccoon. So like, I don't fully buy that these characters actually go with each other. And I also want to just see Jean, and this has the Black Order in it, and the Black Order just goes down with like 1 punch at a time from all these other characters, and then Jean finally at the end gets a scene with Thanos, but then she has to use Aldani to like get through the scene. I'm not one of these feats people. I don't need Jean to like do special feats all the time and like be the most powerful character that there ever was. I'm just saying, you've got a book called Phoenix. We've got a solo book for Jean finally. I know you can do this, Stephanie Phillips, because I'm reading Grimm and I love it so much. Just let the book be about Jean Grey. Why can't we focus on Jean Grey? Why are we in issue 7 and it's still not about Jean Grey? Okay. It started raining outside, so if that gets loud, I guess I should look at the chat, right? I wouldn't even know. You could all be dead. It could be the apocalypse. Nuclear war could have started. I wouldn't know. Logan Wayne, I could not hate Mystique more. I was like screaming out loud at how much I hated it. I was like screaming at the screen about like words that I cannot say on a stream. And I say some curse words on the stream, but I hated it so much that the things I said about Declan Shalvey, I don't need him to hear that. I don't need YouTube to hear that. I don't know if I've hated an issue this much for a while. It really, I don't think he gets what Mystique, I don't think he gets it. I think he pitched a book that he just wanted to write, and it's not a Mystique book at all. I think it's deeply stupid. And I think anybody who likes it probably would just like whatever stupid bullshit he wrote. Sorry, Dom, I love you, but I skipped this in my poll because I thought it was just going to be like some stupid, like cheesecakey sex books. It was called Pinup Apocalypse, and I just saw the name, so I was like, I didn't look into it more. But then when I looked into it, actually, I'm like, oh, but like pinup girls as like the final girl and having the gun and like being the adventure. Now I kind of wish I hadn't skipped it, so I probably will read it when it gets to issue number 2. You know what? Since I'm distracted anyway, let's just catch up with the chat. Oh, I starred that one chat. So if I show the thing that I starred, then can I find it again? No. Gosh, I'm just hopeless. I don't understand how to like put a bookmark in the chat. There it is. No, it did work. It worked. Okay. Now I'm going to unstart it. So here's where we left off. Live play versus computer game for D&D. Very, very different. But James did enjoy the video game. So Black Label, yeah, Black Label are magazine size like Harleen, and then I think the hardcovers are like even bigger magazine size than the actual comics. Somebody who's got the actual comics would have to say, I don't know for sure. I loved Harleen. Georgie Chimchimov says, honestly, hadn't enjoyed Jakin since he came back in Uncanny Adventures. He kind of lost his edge. Yeah, the reason I have so much allegiance to Jakin is I love Daken. I love his original book by Rob Williams from 2010. That book was so pleasing. It was so transgressive. And I've kind of been like chasing that high ever since then, like trying to find the Daken that I remember. And I don't think that anybody like quite gets it. And maybe they're like scared to make him that evil. And they're like scared of going back to that trope that all bisexual people are like evil and they'll cheat on you or whatever. But like, it was so satisfying. And I think you could still do that with him as a good guy. Just have him be a morally questionable good guy. They do it Damon Hellstrom all the time. I also, Nick, and was loving Daken and Krakoa and X Factor. I think Leah Williams totally got it. Like we could bring Leah Williams back. She would write a perfect Daken book. Stuart Morris, late to the show this week, doing a full X-Men Crisis reread. Have to say, you really see how great Claremont's writing was after reading Avengers Defenders issue. Yeah, Claremont, not a lot of people were doing it at Claremont's level at Marvel at that time. Harvey Picars goes, hello, my friend. The game is going great, but I need Jalen to do a bit of rushing in the second half. Clearly, we're talking about my Eagles, E-L-G-L-E-S, Eagles. Tyler is still talking about data pages and X Factor. Ooh, I didn't see the unredacted data pages. Send them to me, Tyler. But I want to see that. Don't you remember how much we loved X Factor? And then how X Factor 10 like killed our show because I was so angry that I like didn't want to do the show anymore. Okay. Reese was good in Man of Steel. I agree. Really great art there. Goodness, I'm a strong reader. I don't know what that means. What does it mean to be a strong reader? Not with my eyesight, that's for sure. Because the reason I'm stumbling over names now is I have the credits on a smaller screen than before, and I'm like, I can't see the credits. James said Justice League Unlimited 3, the series getting better and better. The Plastic Man part is only a few pages. It was the heart. I agree, it was the heart. It just like felt like if we're going to do an interlude in every one of the issues that ties into one of the other Justice League series, like make that clear. I think that's great storytelling. Like be like, and elsewhere this, and then like let that tie in. And I just felt like we haven't super been doing that consistently, but if we're going to be doing that, I'm really, really into it. Makes me punch myself because Novaargh did not add JLU because didn't have room to get another title. Yo, I feel it. I feel that. Guess what, man? DC Unlimited, even if you don't get Ultra, but if you do get Ultra, it's $129 a year, I think, last I checked in US, which sounds like a lot, but that's only 2 omnibuses, and you can read every single DC single issue 30 days after it comes out. It is a lifesaver for me. I just like let it get to the 31st day and then I'll like catch up on stuff. I mean, clearly this year I won't be able to if I'm going to do the show and always be caught up, but like I easily paid for itself fivefold last year. Max Applebaum's liking Kid Appleman is liking Kid Venom. I have not read it all, so I have no idea what it's about. Tiger Eyes loves Al Ewing. He's got to be one of the most loved writers right now. Like nobody dislikes. Even people who are like cool on Al Ewing, I don't feel like people dislike. But Tyler and Max and I all don't like his Venom. I think it's time to move on, Al Ewing. Move on from Venom. Tiger Eyes has not read Venom yet. Richard Fearing, I'm always happy to see you, my friend. Hope I'm well. And I did have a great weekend. I mean, I read comics the entire time. And played D&D. Those were the only 2 things. It was nerd weekend. Read comics, played D&D, cooked pretty good dinner last night. Peruvian chicken, one of my favorite recipes. James Abel didn't think Mystique wasn't bad. Did like the ending. Just don't see the point. Yeah, I don't see the point. And I also thought it was bad. Max is loving the ongoing contrast between Crisis and James reviews. Don was saying yesterday how much he's doing Living Room Speak. James Abel says, this felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy book about Phoenix #7. I agree. I did like the new character Donnie, but it felt like it had some potential, but it didn't last long. Yeah, it feels like it's frustrating me because unlike Mystique, which is terrible, Phoenix feels like it has all the right elements. It has the right art, it has the right cast, it has the right scope, it has the right villain, and it's just not like getting over the line. I'm like, just try harder, Marvel Girl. Larry's Library has to take off, but I'm so glad you got to stop by for a little while. Double Down Slot says, impressive the way I go ham on comics. This is not for show. I mean, if anything, I get crazier just alone in a room about them. This is like sometimes the toned down version. Novaargh said, did the person who wrote Mystique write for movies before because thinking Juggernaut is a mutant Mystique? No, it's Declan Shalvey. He's an artist. He's drawn tons of X-Men. I always, like, I never know if I should get that angry about a continuity thing, because I'm like, I always could have missed something or forgotten something. Like, things go in one ear and out the other ear with me because I read so many comics, but it just didn't seem right to me. One Wheelchair X. We're going to do a stream together this year. We will find a time, I swear. I swear this issue is the first time we have narration for Jean in the series. Yes, it makes me crazy that every character other than Jean has gotten to narrate the series. It drives me crazy. One Wheelchair X is the person I want to highlight the YouTube channel of this week, actually. That was on my to-do list, so maybe James or Max could put it in the chat. I think it's just youtube.com, One Wheelchair X. I love his opinion. It's not One Wheelchair X. Oh, maybe it's not One Wheelchair. Maybe I forgot to put the X. Is it One Wheelchair X? Signs say yes. Okay. I'm going to put it in the chat. He's doing deep dives on the X-Men books, but he's just catching up to them. So like he's deep diving at almost like a trade weight interval. And I just always jive with his opinions on X-Men. And I think he's genuinely funny. And I think he doesn't have a lot of subscriptions because he was just doing video on TikTok. No, bring it to YouTube, my friend. It's multi-purpose, that editorial calendar. I'm writing actually an article about that for a client right now. Like if you're already doing video for one platform, figure out how to use videos for other platforms. It says me, who's only doing video for YouTube. But anyway, I will highlight that in the chat when I get to it. Please go subscribe to his channel. Love the outburst deserved. Well, Martian Pilgrim, make sure if I don't remember the thing you asked me to talk about later is a late in the alphabet book. Make sure you remind me to talk about it. I can't remember if I've done it already. You know who says that's the problem with Phoenix. Phillips is not telling a Phoenix story, but a story with Phoenix in it. Perfectly said. This is why Tyler is one of my best X-Men friends. Plus all the mess with the original artist. Yeah, who is like a tracer or something. Captain Okuna, Krisis, so happy I'm back regularly screening. What do I recommend we read to prepare for Hickman's upcoming Imperial series? Well, the thing is, they're toys that Hickman has not got to play with too much. I think if anything, you probably will want to have read some of like War of Kings, because that kind of sets the stage for like that Imperial part of the cosmos. But you know Hickman will just do whatever Hickman wants to do. So probably read his first arc of New Mutants, which was like Shi'ar. And then there was one issue that was an all Shi'ar story in X-Men 2019. Brett Booth drew it. We covered it on this channel. It might be issue, let's see, X of Swords was 13, 14, 15. 16 was them arguing with the Quiet Council. I think it's issue 17, but it's Brett Booth art. I think that's the last time Hickman really touched that. So I think there's, and I mean, who knows? It could have a lot to do with the Fantastic Four. He did a lot of Inhumans and stuff in this Fantastic Four. But I think if you want a quick primer, that first New Mutants arc by him, and also that one X-Men issue by him. One Wheelchair X, also think Rena's final issue drawing Phoenix before heading back to the original artist who had the tracing debacle, Miracolo. I love Storm. I must have missed Logan asking about Storm. Oh yes, Storm. I think Storm is the best X-Men comic and possibly Marvel's best comic. It's in my top 10 right now. Nick N was eating pizza, so now he can type, love JLU. Glad it's not just focusing on the big three. Yeah, I want the big three to be presences in JLU. I want them to be on voice in a Justice League book, but then I want to experience more. I want other things to happen too. Chris Brogan, catching up in the early part of the show. I missed Black Mask releasing books. Black Mask, you know, I find, and we're going to hit this when I talk a little bit more about some of these indie publishers as the weeks go on. Indie publishers tend to have a vibe. They're not all an image where like anything could be anything, and it's just about like a prestige place to be. I think Ahoy has a very specific vibe. We're going to talk about that in a few letters. I think Mad Cave has a very specific vibe. Black Mask had a vibe I liked. All the books were deeply weird, and that appealed to me, even when I didn't like them, and I missed them. I liked their voice. Same with Afterglow, and I think, or Aftershock. Aftershock, they had such a specific vibe, and like, even if I didn't love the whole series, I always knew I was going to get a good #1 issue from Aftershock. And I miss that. I like that Mad Cave is kind of filled out. I like that we have DSTLRY now, but I actually said the real name, sorry. But I just miss those indies. And so whenever an indie is coming up, and that's why I will put stuff on the screen that I haven't read, that I'm like, should I read this? Has anybody read this? Because I want to expose that. Like, this is how we get a stronger comic book industry. It's not just like the same, like Marvel DC, like support Mad Cave, support these comics that are making things accessible. And I really like that about Black Mask. Just so you know, I tend to skip over comments more when you're adding each other because I don't want to like air your laundry to the whole world. So like if you're frustrated with me because they didn't highlight something, maybe it was because you were talking to somebody else. Sometimes I don't know. Not that you shouldn't. I want you to talk to each other, form a community, love, grow bonds. But I that's not the thing that I'm highlighting. So here is One Wheelchair X's YouTube. I want to highlight a YouTube of somebody new or different every week. I know I'm not like a big juggernaut. Like I've got about 2,500 subs, which by the way, thank you. Like literal hundreds of people have subscribed over the course of this month, and it pushed me over 2,500. I'm not a big pay attention to the numbers person. Like it's not like I'm going to go 3,000. Let's have a show to celebrate. Like, I think that's great. And no shade to anybody who does. I'm just focused on like, are people engaging with the content and really liking it? So you saying you like it matters a lot to me. That said, it was amazing to see 200 people who hadn't subscribed already somehow find the show and subscribe to it. Love that. Character series should focus on the character. Exactly, Richard Fearing. Novaargh had to go bedtime in his neck of the woods, but we'll check back on the rest of the stream tomorrow. Martian asked me about the 10. Oh, right. Okay. I think 10 issues is the right length. It's frustrating when something ends at 10 issues, but if you couldn't spark a fire after 10 issues, which is like 2 or 3 arcs worth, then you know what? You lived your life. You burned brightly and you faded away, and that's fine. So like when they canceled Captain Marvel after 10 issues, when they captured Captain America after 16 issues, that's fine. I'm just saying when you only get 1 arc, sometimes that's not enough to see where the book was going. And the example I'll use is the current run of Deadpool by Cody Ziegler, which is on next week's poll. But I think I hated the first arc of the book. I'm like, this is dumb. Get Cody Ziegler off of Deadpool. I don't understand. Then I read the second arc and I was like, oh, this book is amazing. I totally get everything he did in the first arc. I totally understand why. Like it's a special talent to write a great number 1. It's a special talent to write a great first arc. But I think you can do more if you know that you have legs to last to 10 issues. And I just think it's a positive thing, especially at Marvel and DC, if they let things get to at least 2 arcs length. Maybe that could be 8, but I just don't think at 5 or 6 there's enough time. Now, I understand from a sales perspective, if something's not selling, it's not going to sell by the time it gets to issue number 8. And I completely appreciate that. At the same time, as readers who did buy the book and who might try the next book, if you don't give us faith that you're going to give something at least enough legs to get to issue 8 and issue number 10, then we're not going to buy the next book. And then you get into Marvel, who just does miniseries all the time, and we just skip them because they're miniseries. So I think if you would just let us know that books will always make it 2 arcs, I do think that leads to healthier books in the long run. Wheelchair X saying thank you for the shout out. You just got a new job. So you're behind it. You know, sometimes keeping yourself alive comes first. Like our goal this year, everybody in this world is freaking crazy this year. Our goal is survive. Our goal is be cockroaches. Our goal is be unexterminable. So that's the main thing. So if you've got to go, you do your job rather than comic books. If you've got to take care of your family, if you've got to cook dinner, those are the things we have to do to be cockroaches. Then when we live, we will have time for fun. So if you've got to take a little time off from fun this weird year, and this is not for Wheelchair X, this is me talking to everybody. If you got to take time off from fun to be a better cockroach, be a better cockroach. But we're going to live through it, and we're going to help other people live through it. And to do that, we've got to just take some time to survive. Kryptonite Kid, coffee and chat. If I had coffee one day when I don't care about my own well-being or the well-being of the people around me, maybe the next time the family goes camping, I will drink a coffee on air and you will see my descent into madness because my body does not process caffeine correctly. And if you think I'm crazy right now and talk fast right now, I ascend to another dimension when I have caffeine. And I have a live stream in mind. We're going to talk. We should talk. We're going to talk. I'm not going to make this all about talking to you. This is why it's nice to be on Discord sometimes, because these are people that I miss talking to all the time. And then Harvey Pickers goes, Chris isn't having an ice cream party at 3K Sum. If you think I need an excuse to have an ice cream party, you are sorely mistaken. Okay. Did I enjoy Vision by Tom King? Weirdly, that is my all-time highest rated comic book. I don't know if it was just early in Tom King's tropes, or if I liked Tom King playing in the Marvel universe better. I think he does fit the Marvel universe way better than the DC universe, honestly. But I love Tom King's Vision. Absolutely love. 6 out of 5. Perfect comic book. Okay. I'm going to read this one, then I'm going to start so I know where I left off. Speaking of arcs, says Georgie Chimchimov, wouldn't it be better if Marvel and DC let writers do more one and done and 2 and 3 parties? Kelly Thompson said something very interesting about this on her interview on Near Mint Condition. I'm sure James will pop up in the chat, maybe, no pressure, with a link to that, where she said Marvel was much more prescriptive, that like you had to hit a certain number of issues and that was a trade, whereas DC, she felt, gave her a little bit more leeway. And I thought that was a really interesting comment. There's clearly things going on behind the scenes about that. Another really great interview, I know I mentioned already, I think, but it was so good. The Comic Pals interview of Kieran Gillen from yesterday. I actually woke up at 5:30 yesterday morning, and it's a Sunday, the one day I don't have to wake up at 5:30 just to watch it, and it was so good. And he talks about pacing stuff like that too. Okay, I've started that comic, so I find it. Y'all, I can't miss Kid Crisis's first day school orientation, so we gotta finish. I know I keep saying that, but it's because I'm telling myself as much as I'm telling you. Power Girl by Leah Williams. Okay, I have pluses and I have minuses here, and I want to be very balanced. I love Leah Williams's brain. I think we would be great friends. I would love to be friends with her. She's one person I almost get parasocial with. But that aside, she didn't draw. She worked with David Baldion drawing X Factor when we were covering X Factor back on this channel. Well, he's on this book now, and this issue is the best art I have ever seen from David Baldion. It is so gorgeous. I'm so obsessed. The colors were by Romulo Fajardo Duder, so maybe he just needed a DC colorist all this time rather than a Marvel colorist. I took so many pages from this book because they're gorgeous. It looks like a cartoon brought to life, like breathless, amazing. Favorite art of the week. Also, Becca Carey on letters. Friggin' love her. Now, Leah Williams has not quite landed on the voice for Power Girl. And I know people love Peach. So I'm like, what? Like, who is she? Like, I don't feel like she's distinct from Supergirl. You could just reskin her as Supergirl and a lot of this book would work. But this issue looks great. It's engaging. It's funny. And it has a good supporting cast. It's a great point to jump in. And the art is peerless. It's amazing what David Baldion has leveled up to be able to do here. So Power Rangers, I don't understand. I thought they said the universe was like over, but then they were going to restart it. But then it's been this Prime book, and Melissa Flores has been writing it for a while. I was going to do Power Rangers guides last year. I was going to hire somebody to do them because I don't understand Power Rangers. But then they made it out like the whole universe was canceled. So are we just in this like last breath kind of Secret Wars part of the universe? Is it going to restart? Is it going to be different Rangers? I don't understand. If I could understand, I would start at number 1 and like follow it, because I love picking up other IP that I've never read before. It's kind of fun to like dabble, dip your toes in that. But I just don't, it's too complicated for me, which is me saying that. Powerpuff Girls, also not one of my IPs. Kelly Thompson started writing this, but it's that Dybird again. Amanda Dybird's writing it. Prairie Gods is a man cave that I didn't read. One thing, I'm not really into like Wild West and like miners and prospectors, even if it's a little bit horror, that's like not really my strike zone. Rat City, I read the number 1 because I wanted to be able to talk about it in an educated way. I didn't catch up to it. It's kind of cool. It's an alternate multiverse of Spawn, and it's basically Spawn 2099, but not in Spawn's actual universe. But because Spawn did something in the Spawn title, it kind of rippled out across the universe. And so it's this really cool setup. This is by Erica Schultz, who also writes X-23 and Daredevil for Marvel. The writing is really good. Like, it's a pretty cool dystopian future. She communicates all the rules about it really quickly in the number 1 issue. The colors are really, really great. Like, exactly what I want from this. And it kind of, she does this really cool thing where she keeps the people at a distance in the writing, but then she has a really personal narrator in the narration boxes. So I'm really excited to catch up on it. And I actually thought it was just going to be disposable. And then I liked the number 1 enough that I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll catch up on this in a week, that I'm not just going to like speed binge it in an hour. So, but it's a Spawn book, but it's a standalone Spawn book. So if everything Spawn is like too much for you, which is already growing too much for me, you might actually really like just that one. Okay, I have a lot that I want to talk about on this. So I'll start the timer, but I might have to give myself like 5 timers because I read all 5 issues of this. I fuck with the Valiant Universe in a major way. I love it. If you're like bored and you want to just dive deep into a comic world and you just want to get lost and not see another human being for weeks, go on whatever platform has all of that Valiant stuff from 2012 forward right now. Maybe it's on Global Comics, I'm not sure. And just like deep dive. I have to fix my Valiant guide. I overwrote it at some point. It got broken, so I have to fix it so it could be helpful for you again. But I love this universe. I love these characters. And the great thing is, all of its events have been great. Like, they really pull together the characters really well and like do cool stuff with them that makes you want to go back and read the other books. Well, this is the end of that universe because apparently they're rebooting it. And so this is like the final finale. But I went back and read this whole series. So first there was a 24 series called Resurgence of the Valiant Universe that itself had stemmed out of some other comeback series. And then this was the finale, and this is the finale of the finale. The art in the rest of the finale was so gorgeous that I couldn't even breathe. And then this one had different artists, and it really bummed me out. Like, I would have waited, like, why couldn't we have waited another month or two and just waited for that initial artist to draw? So it wasn't bad. Like, this is a pretty cool action page, really dynamic, fun. Ninjak slicing somebody's heads off. But look at what it looked like before. It looked like the like best DC book. and even better. And I think Valiant has had great art all along. Like they never cheaped out on the art. The thing is, even if you haven't been reading Valiant all along, I think you could pick up this Resurgent right from the beginning and dig it. It's like a universe ending event. It has a huge cast of characters that has a great who's who in the beginning to tell you all the characters are. And it's one of those books that if you see a character you like and they're doing something fun, you can go back and read like dozens and dozens of issues of them. I loved the story. I think the way they're killing the world is great. And it makes me sad. Like it makes me want to go back and reread every Valiant comic book, which is a successful story. I think this final one, it tried to do a little bit too much. Like it was trying to close down this universe and remind us there can be multiverses and that maybe the 90s Valiant was an original multiverse we might go back to and that we're going to get a new multiverse, but then these characters that we were following are maybe going to wind up at a different, it just tried to do too much at the very, very end. But I respect that. I respect the hustle. And Fred Van Lent, I think, is one of the great comic book writers of the past 20 years. He always writes really engaging superhero stuff. This series was so fun. It was like all 4.5 out of 5 comic books for me. I cannot overemphasize how much fun I had with it. And I hadn't read Valiant for like 3 or 4 years. I do not think you have to be up to date on Valiant to get it. A lot of the characters they used were Valiant books that I had never read, but I still totally was able to catch up. Just really, really great stuff. If you remember back to 2019, The Life and Death of Toyo Harada, which is like another one of their big event series, was one of my top 10 books of that year. So you cannot go wrong with these big Valiant books. And Insurgents, another one of their big event books, it's one of my top 5 books of the year that came out. Like Valiant always does good events. So my fingers are crossed now that Alien Books is bringing them back that it's going to be good because I want Valiant to be good. I love Valiant comic books. I didn't read this Mark London book. It's another one of these books in the underworld. So I guess maybe it had Wolvenheart people in it. It just like, I was too much. I tried to catch up on too many Mad Cave books this week. So maybe I'll go back. I didn't read this one, even though I saw this cover. I'm like, this is so my stuff, like Jack the Ripper, Victorian era stuff. Then I saw Steve Orlando. I'm like, it's going to be a lot of words, and I'm not going to like it. So maybe I'll let it accumulate a few issues, and then I'll read the number 1 and see if I feel it. I'm not currently reading Savage Dragon. God bless Eric Larson for still drawing his weird kinky sex book. I respect that. Scarlet Witch. Not the boar worms, not the ice worms. It's just, okay, let me be productive. I am obsessed with this artist, Lorenzo Temeta. They drew, I guess he drew the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver miniseries. It was like the most gorgeous friggin' thing I'd seen. And it kept me engaged. And I love how Steve Orlando does this the second person narration. The last door resists your student. Her gift for abjuration hinders its function, but a hex bends luck to your side and pulls you both through. It's so clever. Who's doing that? Like Steve Orlando, find your niche, like find your thing, right? This is to me so much more interesting than a lot of other things that Steve Orlando does. All that said, this switched colorists. The colorist previously on Lorenzo Temeta was Paul William, and it was like glorious. And I read one panel. I was like, colorist isn't the same. And then I went to the credits and it's somebody different, Ruth Redmond. It still looks good, but Ruth Redmond kind of dialed up the kind of like shiny gradient quality, whereas I think Paul Williams kind of made it like flatter and more colorful, and it really just hit a little harder. And it just kind of took me out of it. Also, it didn't have that much Wanda. It really, the thing about these one-shot stories that Orlando is doing, sometimes they're really Wanda focused. Sometimes they get really focused on the one-shotty aspect. This, I think, got a little over-focused on the one-shotty aspect, and Wanda wasn't as much of a presence in her own book. But this Steve Orlando run of Scarlet Witch is a gift. It's a gift that we have it. It's a gift that it's on its 3rd series and Marvel keeps finding a way to keep extending it. It's just so fun. It's good for the character. He's exploring so many great sides of her. People online are like, you're not doing her feats right. Who cares? Look, my thing with Scarlet Witch is at least do chaos. Like she's got to be chaotic. If she's not doing chaos magic, that's when I get frustrated. And I really think she could be doing more chaos magic. That's her actual power. But that aside, I'm not looking for feats. I'm just looking for chaos, and I think it's a great book. I read this book by this guy. If you go back to my original doing this live thing in 2021 called You Promised Me Darkness, and it like blew my mind. So I saw this and I was like, this cover is amazing. And it's the same person, but it sounds like it's totally different. It's about like a magic school, and it's like the 3rd series that he's doing in it. I didn't even see it until this morning until I was getting ready for the show, and I realized it was the same guy because I just had it in my like covers file. And this cover is like, I love pink on covers, and this pink with this black on, and then like the texture. And he's like the writer, artist. I think he also letters. So I will be catching up on this. You Promised Me Darkness was so weird. I keep wanting to get a physical copy of it, but it's hard to get your hands on here in New Zealand. And I'm like, I'm not going to pay like $60 to get it shipped from the UK, but it was so cool. And I think about it all the time. So I will try to get to read to this. You know that I love love my 90s bullshit. And there is nothing that is more 90s bullshit than but Tucci went like hard Comicsgate, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And they did like a She omnibus. And I was so excited to get an omnibus of it. Like, how fun would that be? Because I had a lot of these original comics. But I'm like, if you're just going to be like a chowderhead, like, I don't really want to support that. But then I see this cover. I'm like, oh, I really missed this. I really liked it. So maybe I'm going to read it. But honestly, it was like so far down my pull this week. And I can't decide if I really want to support him or not. So I just put it off. Soul Taker. I only got to read the number 1 of this, but I want to talk about it like with my 60 seconds because I do want to catch up on it. It was great. It totally hooked me. I just literally had to like get online for you. Such a cool concept from Thomas Snigalski, who is a writer of Vampirella for many, many years. I just was so into it. Like, so it's this woman, she's kind of a vampire, but she's not really, but she like feeds off of people's energy. And she's had this long-term arrangement with this pharmaceutical company where if she gives them a sample of her blood once a month, they will just like pay her off so she can just like live her life in Boca Raton or whatever and just be like a retiree. But then they decide they want more and she decides she doesn't want to give anymore and things come to a head. So clever. This is what I'm looking for in an indie book. Like, give me a concept that's so original and so different from anything that I've ever read before that I'm like, oh yeah, cool, totally, let's do this. And that's totally what this concept was. And I immediately bought it. I was immediately hooked. I cannot wait. I'm so sad I couldn't get to number 6 to tell you about it for this week. But concept-wise, totally hooked. Great internal art. I didn't even have enough time to save the internal art. That was like how close to airtime I read it. This is just a comic that I couldn't tell. I found it one place called Southside. Some places it was called Southside with like a subtitle. It didn't seem like it was on Comixology. Only 2 issues were out on Global Comics. But for indie comics people, look, your job is hard. I barely can get this YouTube show going every month. But here's the thing. If you want people to read your comics, it is not enough to just be in previews and just put your comic up on League of Comics Geeks, because that's only going to be available to the people who pre-order, because no store is going to order one of your comics just to order it. You got to be findable. When your comic has 2 different names and the number is not caught up to present and then there's nowhere to buy it digitally, like, all these people who see this cover, which looks really cool and want to read it, can't read it. So like, if I had infinite hours of my day, I would be a consultant to people and help them with this stuff. But there's only so many hours a day. I barely have enough time to read all the books I want to read and do the show and do my job and cook the dinner and go to the new student orientation, which is starting any minute now. So I can't do all that, but I am interested in this. And if I can figure out how to read it, I'll read it. Spectrum. I hated this book so much. I hated it. So I dropped it after issue number 1. You know why? I can tell you why. This is one where I can be really specific about what I hated. I didn't mind the amorphous story. I didn't mind it being time swept. I love Dave Chisholm's art. I don't like books that try to be about music, but then they don't want to do real world music for whatever reason, because they're making their own universe, because they're afraid of the copyright ramifications. So then they make up like sound alike music and similar artists. And then they like, I'm a music historian. I like one of my minors is in music. I know more about music than I know about comic books. If this had just used the real music and the real civil rights history that it was referring to, I would have been so hooked. But as the issue went on and I was like, oh, there's all these cool new music artists for me to look up. And I was looking up each of them and none of them were real. I just got angrier and angrier. And then I actually didn't finish the first issue because I just was so angry. So it's just not for me. You might love it, but if you're going to do a comic that's all about music and a love of music, and melody is one of the essential forces of the universe, and you're afraid to make it about music and real music and the real world, then it's just not a comic for me. Star Trek. I don't read Star Trek comics. This is established. Okay. I did say that the thing I hated this most was Mystique, but this gave it a run for its money. I don't know what else I could say about it. It was so stupid. If I could strike one comic from having existed in the past 6 months, it would be really hard for me to decide between this, Mystique. But see, Mystique has some fun stuff for Nick Fury, so I wouldn't kill. I would maybe take that issue off of the history of the planet, or Wonder Woman by Tom King, which I truly think my quality of life is worse while it is in the world. But this was so deeply stupid. It achieved so little. It just told the same back and forth rubber bandy cat and mouse conflict from this first issue to the last issue of a 12-issue series. It's supposed to be about the Battle of Jakku. The Battle of Jakku only happened in this last issue. The whole battle was just one Empire cruiser getting shot down so it could crash on Jakku so that it could be there at the beginning of The Force Awakens. Surprise! That's the Battle of Jakku. Now you know everything you need to know. I hope that no one ever reads it ever again. Okay. And the art was bad. This fight with this one, this happened like 12 times in 12 issues. They kept smacking each other. It was just, that was the plot, was stabbing this lady in the gut 12 times. Okay. This cover looks cool. Is it a monster truck comic book? What would that consist of? Again, what is Keen Spot? Somebody explain it to me. Superman snuck into my top 10 comics this week. See, I do like things. Why? Why did it sneak into my top 10 comics? Well, let's talk about it. First of all, Dan Mora on art, although that's not an easy win for me. I dislike Dan Mora too. Joshua Williamson's on scripts. Not perfect. Here's the thing. It feels big, but it feels grounded. The thing that I want from a Superman comic is I want to feel like he's powerful. I also want to feel like he's smart. I also want to feel like he cares about somebody. If I feel all those things, it could be a whole comic about punching and I'll still be there. Then we have Lois as Superwoman, which some people don't like, but there's a reason because of what happened in Absolute Power, and it's not going to last forever. That really worked for me. And it's got Doomsday, which really works for me. But Doomsday isn't the main villain. He's a tool, sort of these other people that want him. So that really worked for me. And we're getting some Doomsday lore about why he exists and what he might turn into a future, which works for me. And we get Superman and Lois in a conflict, and Superman is going to punch it out, but Lois actually logics it out, which works for me. It's just all things that work for me. Every issue of Superman has worked for me. This book is so good. And it's not even dad Superman. Like, I thought maybe I just liked dad core Superman and I wanted just parent Superman, and that was the only thing I loved about Superman. But this book isn't even about him being a parent. It's 22 issues in. I've loved every single issue. It's just good Superman. Smart, heart, and fists. I don't know, what can we make that rhymes? Punching, violence, war, smart, art, and war. I don't know. We're going to workshop it. But this is my number 10 comic of 2025 so far, taking into account both this issue and the previous issue that I had to read to get ready for this issue. So kind of taking the end of 2024 into account. I love it. Even if you don't love Superman and you're like, well, I've never really read a Superman comic that I've liked. Look, I know that Phil Kennedy Johnson just did the Werewolf Saga. It was so great, but it's like long. That's like a lot to dive into. And it kind of takes Superman away from Earth and his supporting cast. I think if you're just looking for Superman comics to like decide, do you like Superman? Just start this from the first issue in 2023. It's amazing. You cannot go wrong. Okay. Night Watcher. Oh, I caught up on this all the way. This ate a lot of time because I spent a lot of time on this and I spent a lot of time thinking about this. Juni Ba writes it, but not the art. The artwork's by Fero Pei and colors by Luis Antonio Delgado and letters by Nathan Wittick. This is so interesting. So it's in the New Turtles continuity. The New Turtles are doing their thing that they're doing in Jason Aaron's book. And this takes a character that becomes very obvious and is shown in issue 1, but I don't want to spoil it for you if you don't have to, and says, what would they do away from the turtle world? At first, I was really frustrated with this because it kind of promised us that they were going to be a vigilante, and then they kind of were exploring the stories of other characters in the world and not showing us them being a vigilante. And I'm like, well, I thought this was going to be the vigilante book. But then this issue, I'm glad I stuck with it. And this is why I stick with titles, and I try to sometimes if I have the time and the money, because it really came together in this issue. Because in this issue, we realize why they're a vigilante. They're being a vigilante because of what they lost. It's kind of like what I want from after Krakoa. It's like not the mutants, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the mutants in New York were actually in a terrible situation during the last 50 issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was not a utopia, but there's still something to that community and still something that they lost. And there's still something to fight for. And once I saw that here, it really characterized what was happening in the past 3 issues after the number 1, which was a good number 1. And it made me care a lot more. And I got like really, really into it as a result of that. Oh, I always have showing you my downloads folder. You don't need to see my downloads. Because I took a screenshot of this that was so good that just made me like really think. This bad guy in the middle of the fight, oh, I can show it on the screen, said, the mutant community doesn't exist. So X-Men, right? It's a disparate bunch of victims brought together by a freak accident and misery. An opportunity for the return of a valuable apex predator like me. First of all, great writing. Second of all, what a great way to characterize like who mutants are and like what mutants do, and like that it's like sometimes feels like an association of misery. 3, what a cool plot beat. Did I say that already? What a cool plot beat to be like, in the dissolution of mutant society, who will survive? The apex predator. I'm like, oh, like Junipa, you get it. This is what I want from the X-Men comics. Like, talk about, you doesn't have to be a love letter to Krakoa, but don't just say Krakoa was bullshit. Like, react to Krakoa. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Y'all, I want to see your comments so bad, but I have to just get to the end of the alphabet. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles times Naruto. I don't have any particular affinity for Naruto. I'm trying to just catch up to in-universe Turtles. Then I can get into crossover Turtles. Terminators by Declan Shalvey. Given how I felt about Mystique this week, I was not going to catch up on 4 issues of this. Sorry, sir. Time Waits. I love Chip Starsky and I love Marcus Toe. And I want to support this book. Like, can I just pay? It's by these dust refinery people. Can I just like PayPal Marcus Toe? I don't want to be in their digital marketplace. So I could go pay $16 for this digital issue now, but I want to read the other 2 issues and you can't buy them unless you go in the marketplace. I just go back and rewind if you missed my moment of crisis, but I want to read this book. It looks great. Looks like something I'm going to like. I like time bullshit when it's not in my X-Men comics. Tin Can Societies by people. I don't know. I thought it. So I probably should read it. It's on Rick Remender's label, Giant Generator, but Rick Remender's not in the creators listed. So it's kind of like Indie Iron Man, kind of is how they marketed it. But I don't ever vibe with Rick Remender, so I just stopped. I don't even read his number ones anymore. But now I'm like, oh, maybe it wasn't by Rick Remender and I should have read it. Okay. I wanted to leave time for this. I didn't necessarily watch the Toxic Avenger or Toxic Crusader cartoon, but I remember that. That's my era of media. Of like, it was like a weird, creepy, strange CD movie. And then it was also this kid's property, like so strange. Ahoy Comics to me, I know what they're about at this point. I've read so many of them. It's just about the easy joke. And I just get so bored. I can't do it anymore. I'm worn out on the easy joke. But this one has some texture and in a way that I like. It's really following this guy from the beginning. It does this really cool thing where it always starts in the present, but then it skips back to show us like a day before and the day before. And it always outlines that by saying what day of quarantine it is in their town after this toxic spill. So it's easy to follow. And I love it. He's just this total awful nerd in the way of a lot of us were nerds that didn't fit in at all in high school. And he's always like looking for a way to not be a nerd. And it still gets him bullied even more. And then it like goes on YouTube and people know his nerd catchphrases that he said before he got punched in the face. But now he's the Toxic Avenger. And maybe it's hurt his intelligence a little bit, or maybe he's always been that stupid. Hard to say, but that just makes it even more charming. So now he's trying to do good things and he's got the muscle to do good things. And he's like, well, I'm ugly. Nothing could be disputed now. I'm just ugly. And everybody who's going to get mutated by this toxic waste is ugly. So at least we don't have to worry about looks anymore. But he still can't do anything, right? I find it so deeply charming. I think Matt Bors, who apparently fought to bring this property to Ahoy and do it at Ahoy, he was right to do that. He's got the perfect vibe for it. I think it's hilarious, charming. I don't have a lot of specific nostalgia for Toxic Avenger, so I don't think that's what's doing the nostalgia for me. I just think it's like really, really working. So I'm a big fan. I'm going to keep reading it. If you have any nostalgia for the property at all, go read the number 1. I think it might work for you. I could not find where to buy this online, but it's by SEX or CEX, Sex, which like, haha, it's sex. My mailing list is called Cock, Crushing and Crushing Comics. Fun fact. But it's about an elephant who goes on a rampage. Like, how fun, but too far down the list. Okay, I guess we got to talk about this because it's my number 8 comic of 2025. What the fuck, Crisis? How is a multiverse comic your favorite? First of all, this is one that I took a lot of art out of. Perry Perez has never drawn this. Like, I always like Perry Perez. This is on a level heretofore unknown. And did I do multiple pages? I think I did. It's not that it's so stunning. It's that I love the thick lines. I love the shading. I love the likenesses. I love the reactions. I love the playing with paneling. I love that we went top down in the scene to show them spread out across the desk. There's another scene that's stratified across a whole building, and we're seeing the scenes played out in the windows of the building while the characters are walking in front of the building. Smart paneling, smart layouts. But Catherine Blair, I don't know who she is. Did she write for the Loki show? Because this feels like it's in continuity to the Loki show and the Deadpool movie. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but it's got all the same TVA characters, but it's in continuity in Marvel Comics with Ghost Spider, because Spider-Gwen, this kind of refers to something that set up the Spider-Gwen series. So I'm pretty sure it's our actual Spider-Gwen, but she's doing multiversal stuff, which I do want to see her do, but it's more interesting than her just being on Earth 65, but it's getting her voice right. Catherine Blair is making it look so easy, like effortless. She's doing an alternate Gambit. She's doing Jimmy Hudson. She's doing Captain Carter. She's doing a really fun kind of bureaucracy of the TVA. She's making it all seem so simple, like anybody should be able to do this well. Perry Perez is drawing the comic of his career, Guru effects, coloring it really well. Josephino's letters, a little anonymous, but very readable. I love this gag too on this page of like what is her name? Little Miss Timepiece 2024. I forget what she's called, but she's just like trying to get the cat off of the keyboard. Just like such a funny little background gag. I just love it. I love it. I can like alternate universe comic books. And there's like a fun, like what's going on with the multiverse hook to this. And then they have to go to hell, but it's not really hell. And the characters are arguing over if they should be working with somebody in hell. Catherine Blair makes it look so easy. How is it so easy? I don't know. Okay, let's keep going because, oh my gosh, I have to leave the house in like a second. Ultimate Spider-Man, issue number 13 by Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto, colors by Matthew Wilson, letters by Cor Petit. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, but this was stupid. I'm pausing to let that sink in. You got to let go of your Hickman love and how much we love Cicchetto's art because it's beautiful sometimes. And you got to remember that there's a story being told here, which is dumb. The whole conceit of this is that we only get one thing happening like a month. But the thing is, Hickman keeps pushing the camera to the side and showing us something that's happening that month that's not the most interesting thing. Like we see Spider-Man's kid in the Spider-Man costume. I guess that's fine. We see them trapped by Kraven, but we get pages and pages of him talking to Mole Man and Mysterio. And then the thing we actually want to see is the confrontation with Kraven, and we stop before that. And then the next month is going to like pick up after this because it's going to be a month later. Like I get between the raindrops, but you have a very limited resource here with this book, and Cicchetto's art is very limited resource. Hickman, like get your head in the fucking game. Where is the actual part of the story that's interesting? It feels like we're seeing all supporting stuff in this issue and last issue and the month before. Where was that great comic that was the best comic of March? I know you all like it, and this is why I'm just different than you. I'm wired differently. I think this was deeply stupid. I don't care. Nothing happened. It was all the setup scenes to set up something that I never got to see, and we already know about all the characters that got set up. Show me something new and different. Ultraman by the Avengers, I don't read because it's Ultraman, but you know, that's probably nice for somebody. Oh gosh, I have to end on this. This made me have really mixed feelings because it had, I didn't even do an interior page because I hated it so much. I mean, do we need 60 seconds? It's terrible. Fire them. Fire everybody working on this book. The thing is, I love Andrew Bresson. He's the artist of Birthright, and I love him in Birthright. I don't think Matthew Wilson really understood how to color him, though, which is weird because Matthew Wilson is like great, but I don't think the colors were right. And I don't think Bresson drew really any of the new kids on model. And then like nothing happened. I wrote this whole diatribe, which I probably can't even bring up my database now that I've got it in, but it's like nothing made sense. Like, and Gail Simone does this thing where she loves to throw out little like twists of details. Like, oh, that's really twisted. I mentioned that. And sometimes they're like sexy, or sometimes they're dirty, or sometimes they're scary, but they're always stupid. So like Rogue is talking about how good Wolverine is at smelling. And she's like, that's why I shower 6 times a day. That's just dumb, Gail Simone. Shut up. But that's everything. And the kid who's like, oh, this reminds me of when I died when I was 12. Or like, this reminds me when my parents were in the room with me. Stop writing these clever little things that seem like so shocking and try to write a good fucking X-Men comic book, which you seem to be incapable of doing. Look, I don't ever want to seem like I'm like, I don't hate the person. Gail Simone, I mean, she blocked me. So maybe I should do. No, I don't hate somebody. Just curate your internet experience. Block me if you need to. I don't hate Gail Simone. I hate this comic book. How do you have a comic book? I know I'm going to say this every 2 weeks as it keeps happening with Rogue, Nightcrawler, Gambit, Wolverine, and Jubilee. That's this stupid. If you're going to have it be about these kids and do like a Wolverine and the X-Men, maybe call it Rogue and the X-Men. Maybe call it like it's Uncanny X-Men, but it's not just the name. It's that you have these 5 characters and you don't know what to do with them because you just picked your 5 biggest, most recognizable characters and there's no texture. There's nowhere to go. There's no up and down. Jubilee is in this taking care of kids and getting assigned to mentor a kid, and the kid is the death kid, but does Jubilee mention being a vampire, the thing that they would have in common? No. She makes him a sparkly firework. Does Jubilee mention how she's a mom? No, because that doesn't matter, because we're just existing in this world where nothing matters and nobody has read an X-Men comic before, and we're just like writing this stupid, ooh, cute cottagecore bullshit nonsense of these 5 characters who have no personalities, and we're just like, Gail's only version of texture is writing these stupid little I shower 6 times a day comments for Rogue, and these wolves, they're violent, they tore somebody's throat out, they tore their hand off, and then the hand's on panel, and then the person's like, great, I'll take 5. That's because this comic is stupid. If there was something that it had to say, there would be a plot, but there's no plot. There's only these little jokey moments, and all the jokey moments are wrong. We don't know who any characters are, and the actual X-Men characters don't make any sense because they're not being written as themselves. I hate the X-Men line is so bad. Okay. Bad in a different way than with Gold. When Gold was out, I was like, well, this is just boring, but this is like aggressively stupid. I loved this comic book. This was real. Oh, I'm so happy this came after V comes after you. God bless the alphabet. This comic book was so cool. So it's kind of like the Matrix, sort of, where you like the part where they get all the Jackson stuff put in their body. And so you've got all this stuff, but it's in the present day, and you get it because theoretically maybe you need it because you have like a heart murmur or something. But then one of the things is that people can jack into you and see what you're seeing and experience what you're feeling. So some people used to be prostitutes, which is fine. Sex work is real work, but some people use it to like jump off of roofs or like go to parties they could never go to, or like have access to places they could never travel to, but they see through these people's eyes. So it's got a cool world, right? Immediately love that world building. So cool. Really great idea. But then it goes into this specific character, and I like what it does with the character too, because it starts out with like, oh, maybe he's just this dumb himbo, or maybe he's the kind of character who would try to do anything. So it would be great for him to have these implants because people like can get him to do anything. Or maybe he's like a drug addict or a sex addict or whatever. And it, like, you keep getting deeper and deeper into the character, and the character is interesting, but the world is interesting too. That's what you got to do in indie. You got to stay up here and make your interesting world seem so different from any world that's been told before. And then you got to stay down here and make your characters seem so differentiated from any characters existed before. And I think Vicarious, perfect name for the book, is giving us that perfect vicarious thrill through this character. I will say that Dan Panosian is doing the covers, and Ilonera Carlini is doing the interior art. Totally different vibe from each other. Kind of stupid to have Panosian on the covers because anybody who buys it looking for this is not going to get it. Her art is a totally different, angular, cartoony kind of art, but it actually works really well for the story and for the character. So I'm not like super angry about it. I just wish that they matched a little bit better. Void Rivals. Okay, I think we have like 2 more, and I'm literally going to miss this thing if I don't leave soon. I wouldn't really miss it. If I was going to miss it, the laptop would be shut. Nothing takes precedence over Kid Crisis. Anyway, Void Rivals is the main book in the Energon universe that is mashing up the spacefaring history of the Transformers with the deep lore of the G.I. Joes, but telling it through these 2 people that are kind of like Romeo and Juliet from different societies that are warriors that are meant to kill each other, but then they realize under their masks are the same. They just have different little soul gem things on their head, but the soul gems are fueled by Energon. And what if they're just all creations of Energon? And what about their big ring of planet that they live on? What if that's just some giant space transform that's going to transform? Like, it's got so many cool elements. I think Robert Kirkman's writing could not be dumber. I don't really get the jokes aren't funny. Like, there's pages that you're supposed to like laugh at, and I never laugh. Like, it feels like the characters have been doing the same thing for 4 issues now. Like, I hate Kirkman's decompression. I don't think he's a very good sequential storyteller. I think he just like wastes time and kind of it's good because he lets the artist show off, but his books never feel dense enough for me. But I'm such a G.I. Joe nerd, and I do love shared universe, and I think Kirkman's building a really cool shared universe here. So like, I've dropped this book literally 4 times. I think I've dropped it on every arc, and then the next arc comes back, and then I see like some G.I. Joe character on the cover, like Pythona was on the cover. She's on. I'm like, oh, I have to read it. I just need to know. And then it does like give me some cool stuff about the universe. There are Transformers in it, and like then I get really hooked, and then I remember the actual Void Rivals in the middle of the book. I'm like, this is so boring. And also, I don't think Lorenzo De Felici is the right artist for this. He doesn't actually draw a lot of the stuff really well. So like, I literally have dropped it 4 times, and then I just keep coming back. It's like a very, very tumultuous relationship. I love World Tree. I got to catch up on the 2nd arc of it this week. The 1st arc is so weird and transgressive. This is a Tinian book with Fernando Blanco, I think, doing the art. Love the story. It's about like, what if there was an evil, infectious, demonic Ethernet underneath our internet, and what if it was always trying to poke through? So weird and messed up. It reminds me of his Mimetic trilogy. If you ever read Tinian's Mimetic trilogy, it reminds me of those books. But then the 2nd arc, I felt like maybe they didn't know if they were going to go for a 2nd arc. And then when they got the 2nd arc, it became like very explainy. So the 2nd arc really just exposits a lot, which is great because it explains a lot of the characters and things from the 1st arc. So if you like the 1st arc, it's rewarding. But I was kind of hoping to get like back to the messed up stuff. But this one like exposits about the expositing. I think it works because it's about a character that we really has been mysterious. And like issue 12 is timed as part of the 1st issue of the 3rd arc to like learn about her. But it felt really small ball to me. And I liked this book because of how like big and epic and weird and transgressive it felt. And I think Tinian still does some transgressive stuff here, but I just am hoping we're going to get to expand the scope soon. And I know we will because I trust Tinian. So like with Tinian, I have the patience for one issue that's a little bit slower because I know we're still going to go somewhere afterwards. And so that's, I mean, the interior art is amazing. It's so good. So incredibly good. Great paneling too, always. And then I read this stupid comic book. Oh, here it is. Because it was Rogue, and because it was Anne the Sentient, I'm like, okay, I'll read it. You know what, y'all? This was incredible. incredible. It was one of my favorite Galactus stories. Part of it was Stephen Byrne on art with Dono Sanchez Almada on colors. Went friggin' off on Galactus. I mean, freaking look at that, right? But it's such a cool conceit, and I can spoil it for you because it's a what if. Silver Surfer falls to the earth, and Rogue, instead of kissing Cody, goes to give mouth to mouth with Silver Surfer. So right from the onset of her mutant ability, she's stuck with Silver Surfer's powers, but she's not like officially a herald. She's just stuck with his powers, so she can like mouth off to Galactus a little bit more than typically she would. The art is so great throughout. It has a great conceit. Like Ann Nocenti like really finds the core of who Rogue will be in this what if story and sells it. It got to the point where it got to like the final page, like 28 or whatever, and I was like, is that it? Isn't there more? Like, it was such a good setup for a Rogue story and a Galactus story, and it was so smart and so clever, and it just like flew by. It was great. Now I kind of want to go read the other what if Galactuses, but and Nocenti, really perfect script, perfect art, perfect colors, just lucked out, really. Totally nailed it. And then I'm not reading Wolverine Revenge because as far as I know, it's not in continuity. And then Wonder Woman. What can I say? Look, I'm not going to go on a whole top. You've heard me scream about enough comics today. Just put Diana at the center. Tom King, he keeps saying he's going to center Diana, but really what he's done is center her love for Steve Trevor, which fine. That ship has long sailed. We know that she likes Steve Trevor. But this book has been so about Steve Trevor and his penis that it's like not even about Wonder Woman anymore. And then he's like, oh, but we've got the 3 Wonder Girls. But he just like writes them as these interchangeable 3 stooges. Like I don't want to read. It's beautiful. Sam Pierre is probably one of the best Wonder Woman artists of all time. But like, I don't want to read about a comic or a character you claim to love who like you seem to actively loathe. There was one really good issue. I don't remember the issue number offhand, but I'm sure you could tell from the covers. Maybe it's 14. I can't remember if it was before or after Ultimate Power. But it was Wonder Woman fighting Cheetah. And even though it had that same oppressive male narrator who I just cannot get interested in, and I think he's too centered in Wonder Woman's book, that issue with Cheetah revealed something very true about Wonder Woman and Cheetah. And that's all I need. I just need it to know something true about Diana. But so often we're trying to tell things in this book that are true about Steve Trevor's dick that Diana isn't coming through. All I'm getting is dick. And it's not even a Nightwing book. I'll take all the dick you can give me in a Nightwing book. In this book, I'm not looking for dick. So I just can't. I can't. And I will catch up on it on DC Ultra, but I'm not going to support this book by buying it monthly. I think it's terrible. Oh, and then this fun bonus, this put together the first 6 issues of the X-Men from the Ashes Infinity comic from last July into a single issue. And it kind of worked out to be about a double length issue with 6 digital issues, which means every digital issue is about 1/3 of a physical issue-ish. I actually really like the Professor Xavier story that's in this. The Scott and Jean story, whatever, is disposable. But I know Tyler hated it. I didn't love that one aspect of the end of Krakoa. It puts like a very specific epilogue and a very specific plot point from Kieran Gillen's side of the end of Krakoa. Or no, yeah, I think it was Kieran Gillen's side. It was actually both their sides. It was part of Professor X killing the people that were at Orcus, and it kind of shows us that was more than meets the eye. And I think it's worth reading, even if you wind up hating it. I think it's worth having read it to know that there was more to that than originally met the eye. And then You're the Hunter from the Future. I could not find where to buy an Arctic Press digitally. I probably wouldn't love this. It's probably like a cartoony Conan thing. By the way, I cannot wait to get to talk about Conan. But it seems like I couldn't find it. Was the story the end? Okay. And we made it. Okay. We got it. I don't know if we're going to get to do a full AMA because I do have to flee, but I did bookmark where I left off so I can get all the comics from there. So if you do have things to ask me, I'm going to go so fast. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually read. So now's the time to ask me. Okay, go. Nearman Kelly Thompson interview, The Powerpuff Girls, Bird of Play, Deadpool, X-Men. Go watch it. It's incredible. Really, really great interview with Kelly Thompson. I gave Omar a bunch of questions, but then he had his own questions because we all love Kelly Thompson so much. James is amazing. We all know this to be true. He is excellent. Whoa, the art's kind of making me regret drop Power Girl. Pick it up with this issue, Jean-Remy. Balion's on this issue for the first time. It introduces everything afresh. It's a jump on issue. It's like a second jump on issue after the initial all-in jump on issue. Perfect. Omnibo, you missed me saying nice things about you, so now it's all over. I can't say any more nice things. No, I'm joking. I love you. Georgie Chimenoff says, first read Power Rangers and I found this pretty user-friendly. Oh, okay. Maybe I'll try it then. I enjoyed Power Rangers Prime so far. It feels pretty slow. Okay, well, I mean, I'm always willing to try things. Power Girl was so off echoes of Kara. But yeah, that's what I've heard so much about, how she's like headstrong and she looks before she leaps, but she's like a little bit funnier and more sarcastic. Like she's a different Supergirl. She had a different experience than Supergirl, but I'm just reading it. I'm like, it just kind of feels like Supergirl, but like teehee. Like I'm like, Leah Williams, you are such a crazy person. I know you can write a better Power Girl. We're 17 issues in. Like bring the heat. Tiger, I'm so impressed I can speak so long with such eloquence during my streams by myself. Do a TED Talk or teach a college class on comics. I would love to teach a college class. I got to fill in for a friend who was teaching college class, and I got to do a couple classes for them. It was one of my favorite things I've ever done. But now I'm in New Zealand where I have no connections and I don't even know what college is like here. So I don't know if I could do that more here. Slim Jim Longfoot. Hey, everyone. Hey, Slim Jim. Thank you for joining us. Jean-Marie Argueta. I've been getting into 2012 Valiant stuff. It's so good. Shadow Man was great. Exo Manowar is almost always awesome. Archer and Armstrong is almost always funny. I think Harbinger was like the one I didn't always love, but then I liked Unity. I don't know if there was one that I hated. I'm sure there was one because it's me, and I'm sure there was some book that just annoyed me. I didn't like The Valiant by Jeff Lemire, but we knew that. Didn't know Jean Grey was in the Valiant universe. Yeah, they kind of did a Phoenixy thing, but the character was cool. There's so many cool character designs that they brought back. Are there trades of Valiant? Yes. They were really good at releasing everything in trade. I'm so sorry that my guide isn't up to date. If I have a moment to breathe this week, I will update it. But everything Valiant exists. They've always collected everything well, except for one series that deliberately was not collected well. Strongly disliked Ripperland #1. Okay, Max, now I don't have to read it. Which era of Valiant? Oh, there's not trades of the original Valiant, like the 90s Valiant. I'm going to do a guide to that too, because I love doing guides for forgotten 90s stuff. They get no traffic, so they're really just for subscribers. So if you like forgotten 90s junk, you got to get on my Patreon and like tell me, oh, I love forgotten 90s junk, because I will do guides to every piece. I want to do a Lady Death guide. I want to do a Malibu guide, but they'll be like eBay links instead of trade links. But also I think there's utility in saying like, what were all the issues, put them in order. Something I've been working on a guide on forever, but it's hard because they're not digital, and so I have to like hunt down every book and get it physically, is the Tick, because there's like no easy page on the internet that's just like, here's the Tick in order. And I think a lot of the thing with those 90s books is like, even if they're not available digitally and we could have to go back and like buy them on eBay, I think people would if you could just figure it out. And that's why I like doing the 90s guides. The start of the 2012 stuff, Starting Universe, that's apparently ending. Yeah, the current Valiant Universe started in 2012, 2013. The previous Valiant Universe from the 90s was a different universe. New publishers currently reprinting them. Yeah, Alien Books is doing like big, like DC Finest style thickies. And so far, it seems like they're mapping really well. They seem to like really have a lot of care and love for the universe. It makes me cross my fingers that the right people were with the IP. Near Mint Condition did overviews on them that I've been watching, and it makes me want to buy them. But I'm like, no, you can read them digitally. Back, Crisis. Down, boy. Okay. Omar has done overviews. I would say Harbingers should have a trigger warning. Yeah, that was, I got triggered on Harbingers and I didn't love the plot point, but I don't want to read a book about the rapist necessarily. Right. You know, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. A lot of stuff. James Abel loved Spectrum. You're the one who told me to read it, so it's all your fault. It's a thing with me. If you're going to do history, sometimes if it's 20th century history, I want to hear about the real events, unless the whole point is you're doing an alternate history book. But to like do such, like they reference Martin Luther King being assassinated, they reference Elvis. Like if you're going to do that, like I want the actual history. Okay. James likes it. This is why different opinions exist in the world. William Lee, I always love when you're here. What a great Sunday watching football and listening to this, especially because it's the Eagles, right? Now, if only we had a cheesesteak. Omnibo needs a brand of coffee I drink. I can't have coffee. It would poison me. He didn't drink any coffee today. This is just Crisis being passionate. I hate that new IDW logo, George Chimchinov. Like, what the hell? I spent like a solid 5 minutes earlier today just staring at it dumbfounded before I realized the W was underneath it. Oh, that reminds me of something. Okay, can I keep talking and keep thinking at the same time? Probably not. So there's this comic that I like loved last week that I was obsessed with. And I think because I read it early in my pull, I didn't remember to put it in my list, and I just wanted to make sure to mention it today, even if I can't find the cover. It was called Shadow something. Oh, I can't remember now. It was Max. Do you remember what it was called? It's like I can't remember. It was about, it's like vampires. It's this guy goes to an island in Greece because his lover went there after they broke up, but then he lost contact with him, and he wants to know what happened to him. But then it's like a total interview with the vampire thing, where it's kind of like all about like the decadent society around the vampires as he gets deeper and defining his friends. It's not actually about the vampires, it's about the world. It's Summer Shadows by Dark Horse Comics. I can't bring it up on screen because I can't find the cover right now, but I loved it so much. If you like Interview the Vampire style vampire stuff that's not about the blood and the guts and stuff, but it's just about like the intrigue around vampires. So enjoyable. I mainlined it all in one sitting. Absolutely loved it. I couldn't believe I left it off the show. Summer Shadows. Really, really loved it. Okay. Keith, one thing I appreciate about my reviews is I articulate why you dislike a comic so much, even in the middle of a rant, even though I might disagree. That's the point. I want to be able to rant about something in a way that will make you like it. Like in my Gail Simone rant, in my Declan Shalvey rant, I hope that I gave you enough information that you would be like, actually, Krisis, that sounds kind of cool. Like that's always my goal. Loved She back in the day, back the omnibus on Kickstarter, backing She Gatecrashers. Yeah, Tucci's art is so good, and Pity I have so much affection for it. It's I know I always preach separate the art from the artist, and I think I just got a little bit too deep about artists, and I have to just separate them so I can see if I can still appreciate She. If it's bad, then the art's bad too, and I can think both are bad, but I have to take my own advice and separate them. James Abel, TVA number 2, this Loki season 3, and they're not even trying to hide it. I don't know if people who haven't watched Loki will understand it. Also, there are way too many characters. I understood just fine, and I haven't watched Loki season 2, and I watched Loki season 1 when it came out, and I haven't rewatched it since then. But so is she a writer from Loki? Is that why it's so good? I don't think you have to have read Loki. I think it actually, I assumed it was a sequel to Deadpool and Wolverine. I didn't think it had anything to do with Loki. I mean, clearly issue 2 ties in with Loki, but is it in continuity to the MCU? I'm so confused now. James Moore hung out with Mount Boars at the bar after a comic show I work for, and he has thought a lot about the book and has big long-term plans to sales keep the book going. He's a big Krakow fan too. Damn, I love to hear the comic book people are good people. Yeah, Toxic Avenger really, really working for me. It's like, at first I thought it was a little dull, but it's the perfect kind of stupid that I like. And I don't always get down with stupid books. I like my books smart. Oh my gosh, the stream is way too long. Miss Minutes is her name. Ultimate Spider-Man 13. Yes, everybody disagrees with me. We know this already. It's like watching the prequel to the upcoming Tyler versus Peter Civil War event. Nick N has never been a Hickman fan. Felt he's look over there when I want to look over here. That is exactly the problem I'm having with Ultimate Spider-Man. So I love the first like 9-10 issues, but now it starts to feel it's feeling like he's like deliberately telling stories around where I want to look. But I will say, Georgie, I do agree. The stuff with the kid with the black suit was really, really great. Lance, nice to see that you made it. Absolutely driving, so can't comment, but we did say Absolute Wonder Woman is meandering a little bit. Feels written for trade. I said that same thing. We're of the same mind there. Krisis is right. Why regarding Uncanny X-Men number 9? One Wheelchair X says Uncanny X-Men 9 is definitely an improvement to the other Uncanny X-Men issues, but honestly, that's not saying much. It's like saying some poop might taste better than other poop. That's a line Gail Simone would write. Okay, Uncanny X-Men, the X-Men book for people who hate or never read X-Men. I agree. The best moment was Jitter Calico, but I was like, ooh, 1 page of lesbians. Well, at least we remember that X-Men is about lesbians because all the best X-Men are ex-women. Also, the ransom reveal makes no sense with his backstory. I completely agree. Krisis saying all these things that I have in his review for Uncanny X-Men, so go watch Tyler's channel. Why would he, in any of these situations, if he's Ransom's cousin? Yeah, I agree. It feels like Simone has forgotten what she's written. Like Ellis has also nothing like how she's written number 1. I agree. It just feels like this comic is just like unrelated jokes that have nothing to do with everything every month. Vicarious sounds like a reminiscence of Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days. Yes, which is both one of the best sci-fi films in the 90s and only increasingly prescient. I watched that once and then we had it from Netflix and I was so excited to watch it again back in the disc days, and my partner sent it back. I was like, no, I haven't watched it yet. So now I haven't seen it for like a decade. James Abel, what if Galactus transformed Rogue number 1? Don't see the point of this issue. It didn't bring anything new to the table. It's the worst comic I read this week. We're in a fight now. We need to go to couples counseling, James Abel. How very dare you? I loved it. It was, first of all, the art was amazing. Second of all, it's what if? What do you want from it? But I respect that you dislike comics because I think Mystique was an affront to humanity and everything about the human race and life as we know it. I know, finally a Monet sighting, and it's just like her being led into a jail cell. I kind of like triple take. Like, Monet? Really? Was that Monet? Hayden wishing us all happy Sunday. People talking about Wonder Woman. Xavier's Secret. Sounds like Marvel should give Uncanny to Anna. Nobody said that. What? Be careful what you wish for. At least she's familiar with the characters. No, she doesn't. No, don't say that. Go read her Captain Marvel Dark Tempest. Anna Senti will drive you off the crazy person deep end if you give her the opportunity. We all know this. Did Kelly Thompson ever address stealing the land shark idea from SNL? That's why I call him Land Shark, because I'm a big SNL. Tyler talking about the retcon and Xavier's secret thinks it's stupid. Basically, editorial wanted him to be a good guy and Magneto to be evil and one doesn't do. See, I don't see it that way. I saw it as in plans within plans, and that that it was telling us there are some things about the end of Krakoa that we haven't fully explored yet, which to me is a positive. Like I want to go back and look at some of those things again, but I totally respect that you feel that way. Reacher Freaking, thanks for the great scream. Can't wait for the next one. Hope the school event goes well. Me too. And look, I made it to the present day. So look, we don't have any time to do another AMA. I do want to play a song, but I guess I'll play a quick one, like one of my really quick, fast songs. You know what? I know what I'm going to play. So there used to be a song that played at the beginning of every one of my comic streams. And I will just play that. It's called Glam. It is 1 minute long, so it's perfect. Look, hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming, even though it was an hour earlier. Look, I don't know how you're going to react or what you're going to say or if you enjoy this or why you enjoy this. So to me, to see so many people participating and commenting, and especially when you start talking to each other, it just makes me happy, because that's what I don't watch a lot of YouTube. I'm busy reading comics usually. And the thing that makes me happy on YouTube is reading Near Mint Condition, watching Near Mint Condition, watching, Omni Dogs Wall, watching Comic Pals, watching Aussieverse, where there's people that are clearly a community and that are friends with each other and they're happy to be there with each other and that have in-jokes and that like each other. I think that's, oh my gosh, one of these weeks is going to be the week that this all collapses. Okay. That's what I love. And so the fact that I maybe am also being conducive to that really, really excites me. So look, thank you for coming for another week. It should be back to the regular time, which is 1 hour later next week. If you haven't already, I really, really would love it if maybe you would consider chipping in $1 to Patreon, or just leave me a comment like here in the YouTube, not in the chat. I mean, yes, you could in the chat because I will read it, but also in the YouTube comments. I'm like, what YouTube thing would you want to see me do at the $5 level? Because I would definitely consider it, because I do think that's coming this year. There is a new guide on crushingcrisis.com. It is the guide to magic. $1 patrons can get it. And I will be back next week. Also, I will be on YouTube only one other time this week. I will be on Near Mint Condition on Thursday afternoon talking about Marvel solicits. So with that, this is the song that used to introduce every video on the channel. It is called Glam. I've been Crushing Crisis. Thank you so much for watching. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3. I was 16, I thought I was David Bowie, 'cause nobody told me there was more to life than being glam, and all the intrigue that comes with being 16. I gave that away to wear a pair of vinyl pants. I could have landed from space for all the sense that I made to the kids in my grave. But if I got a little carried away, it was worth it, 'cause today I know just who I am, who I am, who I am. This has been Crushing Crisis, live Crushing Comics. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next week. Peace and love.